Okay. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. Car ton bras se porte l'épée, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Bill, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Moved by Councilor Butler, second by Councilor Doucette. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none, so noted. This is a public hearing under the Planning Act. It's the proposed zoning bylaw of 485 Northland Avenue. I would ask, he's already ready. There's a little bit of planning that I looked for you, Mr. Aquilina, and you had left your seat already.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you, members of council, staff, and those in attendance this evening. The purpose of this meeting is held pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. As alluded to by Mayor Maloney, it's a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Michael Veneri on behalf of 114-9992 Ontario Limited for property known as 485 Northland Avenue. I will give the details of the application when I present Planning and Development Report 2015-173. Firstly, the method of tonight's meeting, the notice was given in accordance with Section 34, subsection 12, 13, and 14 of the Planning Act and Section 5 of Ontario Regulation 545/6. Notice was also circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and proper signage was posted on the property. In addition, there was a notice on the city's website. Firstly, Mr. Mayor, the explanation to be followed this evening is I will present the application through my Planning and Development Report. We will then open the floor up to the applicant, Mr. Veneri, and he is in attendance this evening. We will then ask council if they have any questions to myself or to the applicant, any clarifications. We will then open the floor up to any member of the public that wishes to address council. I will then give an announcement respecting written notice of passage of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I will give an explanation of future meetings to be followed after tonight's evening. This time, Mr. Mayor, I will present Planning and Development Report 2015-173. Firstly, if I could, Donnie, can you, I don't have a mouse up here. Within the red is the subject property. Council will recall this was previously Northland Manor, operated and owned by the region of Niagara. Mr. Veneri currently owns the property, and he's operating as a boarding and lodging home. There are 8 individuals in that building. However, the property is not currently zoned to allow for that use. Mr. Veneri would like to convert or allow uses of the property within the building to be a private senior citizen apartment house. The zoning presently right now allows a public senior citizen apartment house. The application also proposes to allow a residential retirement home, an apartment dwelling with or without supportive care, future townhouse development, as well as street townhouse development. What you will see on this sketch is the existing building. as well as you will see a block of street townhouses along Northland Avenue. There are the uses, again, what that the applicant is proposing. Donnie, is there a mouse or anything I can control? If you... Thanks. Again, members of council, those are the uses that the applicant is proposing. Again, private senior citizen apartment house, residential retirement home, an apartment dwelling with or without supportive care. Those are to be within the existing building, as we know now. The street townhouse dwellings and the block townhouse dwellings are future uses of the property. Okay. The policies that affect this application are as follows. The city's zoning bylaw zones the property I-24 senior citizens apartment house. In addition to those uses in the institutional zone, the following uses are permitted: an accessory residential dwelling unit, a public nursing home, a senior citizens apartment house. The non-residential uses permitted on the property are an auditorium, a cemetery, a fairground, a public or private hospital, a school, a public and private park, a private club, any public use, a church, a library, and a day nursery. The policies that affect this application is that the city's official plan designates the property as urban residential that permits all forms of residential development. Two policies that I would like to highlight are the city's housing policy, and what that does is that it encourages the city to promote development of an appropriate mix of housing types, densities, and tenures to meet the diverse needs of Port Colborne, taking into account the current and future demographic characteristics, income levels, special needs, and lifestyle considerations. Second policy within the official plan is the affordable housing policy, and that states the city will work with other levels of government, the private sector, community, and nonprofit groups to ensure that sufficient affordable rental and ownership housing is provided. There are other policies with respect to the region's provincial policy statement, the growth plan that encourage intensification within existing areas that have existing services. I won't go into those policies in that much detail, but those policies do have an impact and direct result on this application this evening. The region's policy plan designates this land as urban neighborhood. Important, their policy 11.8.8 says the region supports and encourages local municipalities to support not-for-profit housing agencies as well as the private sector in the development of affordable housing for low and moderate income households, individuals who have physical disabilities, and other special needs groups, including those living in a situation of absolute or relative homelessness. When this application was circulated, we received one comment from the member of the public, and that was Wilma Crosby. She resides at 325 Knoll Street, and her comments were received September 18th. I believe members of council have those comments. I will just summarize those. She was concerned with the lack of specific information. She also stated that the residential character of the neighborhood would be negatively impacted with the proposed changes. The agencies that have commented on this application are as follows. The city's building division has stated that an occupancy permit would be required for the occupancy of any unit, both new and existing. The city's engineering and operations have stated that a site servicing plan will be required. Calculations for water, sanitary, and storm systems are requested to be submitted for review to ensure that the site and existing municipal infrastructure are able to accommodate the proposed works. A traffic impact study may be required, as well as a noise impact study may be required. Review by the Ministry of Transportation may be required due to the proximity to Highway 58. An operated storm sewer system is not available along the frontage of Northland Avenue. The city's fire and emergency services have stated that some of the proposed uses will fall under the institutional requirements contained in Part 3 of the Ontario Building Code. Some of the proposed uses fall under the care facility requirements contained in Part 9.7 of the Ontario Fire Code. The senior citizen home will have to meet the requirements contained in the Retirement Homes Act. The building has an operational sprinkler, standpipe system, and a fire alarm system. These fire protection systems will be required to be maintained based on the proposed uses. An additional private hydrant may be required depending on the layout of the proposed uses. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority indicated they had no objection or need to review the application. The region of Niagara also has commented they support the application. Those comments just came in today, so I am summarizing those, but they would be within the recommendation report that will be brought forward to council. They indicated that there may be a need for a future noise study as well as a traffic study. Those were the comments from the region, but generally they supported the application. This time, Mr. Mayor, that does conclude the application before us. I do note that, as I mentioned, Mr. Veneri is here this evening, and I will ask if he wishes to address council for council's consideration.
My name is Michael Venery. It's a pleasure this evening to be here to speak to council and to speak to the residents of Port Colborne that are here in attendance. My proposed rezoning change is regarding Northland, the former Northland Manor. I've spent the last 6 months or so working with the planning department to try to develop a proposal that will provide the betterment of the community at large. And for what Mr. Aguilina has presented today, I strongly believe that the proposal that I have submitted would make the city of Port Colborne an asset and help the community.
Are you through, Mr. Veneri?
Yes.
I wonder if members of council would have any questions of either Mr. Aquilina or Mr. Veneri. Councilor Butter or Councilor Kenny, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Veneri, right now you are operating a lodging house at that Northland Manor, former Northland Manor, illegally.
I'm currently renting out the facility
Illegally.
to a second party.
Whether it's a second party or not, you're the owner of that property, are you not?
I am, when I would determine that it was a violation of the zoning bylaw. And then when I was determined that it was an error or there was a problem, I addressed that problem by submitting my zoning application immediately.
But you still have 8, as our planner said, people living on a property is currently used as a boarding and lodging house, which is not permitted under the current zoning of the property.
The planning department in the city of Port Colborne allowed me to still rent to this company to provide these services under the strict stipulations that there were rules and guidelines that were followed, and the tenant that was renting the building followed all of those guidelines by fire code, health and safety code, and has been inspected and has followed those.
And who inspected that property from the city?
I believe your property. Go ahead. Sorry.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Kenny, Mike Bendia with the fire department has been through that building numerous occasions, and Mr. Lyle Merritt, our chief building official, is aware of the property as well.
And then, Mr. Aquilino, I'll ask you, is there any violations right now with the residents that are living there?
Right now-
Crowding, insufficient, I guess, areas for them, I guess, for living purposes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, the fire prevention officer, deputy fire chief, is happy with what that building provides. He indicates that there is a standpipe system in the building. There is a sprinkler system in the building. That building is up to snuff with all fire codes. He has no concern with that. As mentioned, the property is not presently zoned to allow for this use, and that's why this application is before us this evening. If there any other infraction with the municipal zoning bylaw, we allow any property owner to comply and to go through the process. If the application is turned down, then the violation kicks in and action takes place. We give due process to anyone that's in violation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so when this report comes before council at that time, if council then turns it down, that's when he will be in violation?
Through Mr. Mayor, if it's turned down and if it's appealed, then the process would kick to the Ontario Municipal Board, and pending the outcome of the OMB, that's when it's final.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Just another question of the owner of the property. Well, what Mr. Aquilina tells us this evening, you're also proposing to put townhouses facing Northland Avenue with this present building behind it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how many are you planning to put there? What are your plans?
There are 6 units on Northland Avenue.
6 units?
Yes.
And those units are how big?
They're between 1,000 and 1,200 square feet.
Okay. And these are going to be, because everything that we talk about here is supposed to be low-income housing. Is that what this is going to be?
No.
No.
Those are not low-income houses.
Thank you. And I guess that's all for now, for me. Thank you, Your
Thank you,
Worship.
Councillor Kenny. Any other questions? Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Veneri. Have you determined how many units you're going to have inside the existing building as it stands?
Inside the existing
Yes.
building,
Yes.
between 40 and 60. But we're not 100%. Between 40 and 60 residents inside the building.
40 to 60 residents. In how many units?
There will be between 40 and 60 units.
40 and 60 units. Okay. Thank you. That's all for now.
Any other questions of council? Councillor Maine?
Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Veneri. I think what happens in this whole process is everybody gets mixed signals. You come tonight before us and say, you're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I think in all fairness, the ratepayers in that area want to know exactly what you're going to do. This is exactly what's going to happen, exactly what it's going to do, rather than we might do this, we might do that, we might add this, and we might add that. Do you have any comment on that statement?
Well, if they can switch to the slide that lists what Mr. Aguilina was saying.
There you had it.
The top 3 is that's what we're going to be doing. Those three types of development inside the building. So there's going to be some senior citizen apartments, there's going to be some residential retirement home, and there's going to be some supportive living care. So that's what we're doing. The building will be divided into those 3 sections.
Okay. Through Mr. Mayor, back to Mr. Veneri. So what you're saying is you're going to go with the top 3. You got street townhouse dwellings, block townhouse dwellings. They're not in the equation now?
They are in the equation. I took your question to be to what's going to be happening with the building. The other 2 facets will be happening around the building. So what's outlined by Mr. Aguilina is what we propose to do. The building will be divided into 3 sections, and the outside surrounding lands will be developed into street houses or town block houses.
Thank you, Mr. Veneri.
Councillor Butters and Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to either Mr. Aquilina or the applicant. I understand the block townhouse part proposed, but I don't really get the street townhouse area and where that's supposed to go and how big that's supposed to be and how many people it's supposed to hold. I also don't understand how many people you anticipate the, I'll call it the Old Northland Manor, would be holding. So I'd like you to answer that, please.
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Butters, the only thing I can comment on are the block of 6th Street townhomes right along Northland Avenue. That is all that we have before us this evening. I know Mr. Veneri has future plans, but those plans have not been submitted in detail. What Mr. Veneri is looking to do is to actually have those uses permitted. I can inform council if those are to be proposed in the future, they would require a site plan agreement. But all we have before us this evening is that block of 6 townhouse units along Northland Avenue.
Councilor Butters, go ahead.
And so to follow up on that, so why is the street townhouse included in the application? Because it's not pictured on the drawing, and you're just looking for like an okay to put something up that isn't identified on the drawing, or I'm a little confused here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in fact, the 6 units, street townhouse units are identified. Right there where my mouse is.
I mean the street townhouse.
The block,
That's-
the block building.
Those blocks, each one of those represent a unit.
Yes,
So those are illustrated on the sketch,
right,
and they are included in the application. It's street townhouse.
okay,
Differs from a townhouse block development by virtue of the fact that a street townhouse is on a street. A block townhouse is on its own with an access from a municipal road. The block townhouse, if that's ever going to be developed, it's going to be to the east and to the south of the existing building.
but it's currently not, it's currently not on the drawing. There's only
Correct.
the one thing on, but are you not asking for both at this point?
I'm asking for both, but as Mr. Aguilera says, when that process comes, I'll need to be working with the planning department to satisfy all of the needs and design to do that second.
Well, generally, through you, Mr. Mayor, neighborhoods kind of like to know beforehand what's in front of them, not kind of, oh, well, kind of over here, over there. Neighborhoods kind of generally like to have a much more concrete idea of what you have planned. So I understand about the existing building, and I even understand about the Northland Avenue block stuff, but what I'm not getting is the sometime maybe thing, because I don't think neighbors of yours are going to be real happy with just waiting and seeing what happens there. Site plan aside, neighbors like to have a lot better idea of what's happening in their neighborhoods. So that's all for right now, but I'm sure I'll come up with something later.
Councilor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Veneri. Mr. Veneri, you've stated that you're not going to be providing low-income housing, but my understanding is that there's an affordable housing component. Is that correct?
There will not be low-income housing on the 6 units that are being proposed on Northland Avenue. I have not explored if it's going to be low-income housing or anything to that effect at this time. I'm asking basically that the rest of the property be zoned that I can build townhouses.
Okay, I thought I had heard that we would be looking at affordable housing.
I think Ms. Reglina said that the property is in the area that can support low-income housing, and there's grants for the government that are giving to low-income housing. I don't think that Ms. Reglina said that this is a low-income housing project.
Okay, there's low income and then there's affordable income. They're not the same thing. I just, I had wanted to hear what your plans were in that direction. Are you going to be providing affordable income housing?
At this time, I have no plans to look in that avenue. At this time for the houses that are proposed.
That would be an interesting question to be able to answer, because then we could have a good understanding of the type of building that you would be doing.
Any questions on my left? Okay, if we're going to go round 2, Mr. Elliott, Councilor Kenny indicated she'd like, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilor
Mayor.
Kenny?
To Mr. Aquilina, just to follow up on what Councilor Butters said, as I represent these residents who are in this area and have been on Knoll Street for many years, I'm very concerned that on this drawing that's being submitted to us tonight, it does not show those block houses. That he's concerned. He said he's going to do it, but those individuals need to know that. They need to know this application, as far as I'm concerned, should not be before us. Unless it's showing us exactly what's going there, that should not be before us. They have legitimate concerns, and they're not not against development. I want that very clear. The individuals who have called me have told me very clearly they're not against development, but they certainly want to know what's being proposed there. Is he going to put only 3 back there? Is he putting 23? Is he putting 40? How many is he putting back there? Back to back? Which way? You said that both the south and the west or east corner. I need to know that too. And I don't think this application should be before us without that being indicated.
Mr. Aquilina,
Thank
do
you.
you have a comment on?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Kenny, that's one concern that I did share with Mr. Veneri. He wanted to move forward with the application that you have before you this evening, and the council can make a decision what to allow and what not to allow on the application. That is your right as a council to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, and then Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Dan. With regards to the 3 policy statements, the provincial, regional, and our own municipal policy statement regarding density, what would be the maximum allowable units for this property, including the building and any additional units that may want to be built going forward?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, the growth plan for the province of Ontario has intensification targets, and those are, because this is within the built boundary, it can go up to 50 units per hectare, 50 people per hectare. So it's all contingent on the size of the property. There are other policies in our official plan that speak to at least a minimum of 15 people per hectare intensification.
Councillor Doucette.
He said 60.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
He said 60.
In looking at that, Dan, in the back portion, I think is what is critical here. Should there not be some form of secondary planning, subdivision planning back there? I mean, he starts putting things back there. That's going to be fairly intense and extensive. Plus, we're going to need all the services back there if he's going to build back there. So I tend to agree with Councillor Kenny in that until we get some kind of idea of what he's doing back there, we don't know whether he's going to need secondary planning. We don't know if he's going to need to show us where he's going to put all his services and where they're going to go to, and is there going to be, so there's a lot more planning that has to happen here before this can happen. And you know, in listening to everything that was going on, that kept coming back to me is, what's he going to do with that back piece? And that back piece is probably going to be the most profitable for him, but he hasn't even planned for it. So we can't, how can we approve something? And I know that this evening is strictly information, but at the same time, he needs to have an indication of whether we're going to approve that or not. And that would be very difficult for me to approve without knowing what's going to happen back there.
Mr. Veneri, do you wish to comment, please?
As Mr. Aguilina has said, that in order for me to build any structure after the additional 6 that are on Northland Avenue, I would have to come to the planning department, provide various types of studies, and then a plan would be submitted back to get proper approval. So it would be something that would come back again towards the city to make a decision if it would be allowed or not to do that. So the only thing that I'm getting really approval for, or trying to get approval for this evening, is rezoning of the building 6 townhomes on Northland Avenue, and having the possibility to redevelop the property, which would have to go through various channels that Mr. Aguilina has stated, that would have to come again for review and approval. It saves me time, it saves money for the process.
Then, to Mr. Aquilina then, what we will be approving this evening is strictly the building plus the 6 in the front, and that's it. Or what we're looking at, we can't approve this evening, but what we're looking at is strictly that. everything behind that building will have to come back to us. Yes or no?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Doucette, those uses that you see up top there are all before you this evening. Council, when they get the recommendation report, can decide which uses they would like to see on that property. As indicated, the block townhouse development is to the rear of the existing building. We know the street townhouse is at the front. Those are the uses that are before council this evening. Council can make a decision at a future meeting when the recommendation report is before you, which uses you are going to support or not support.
Okay, so you're not giving me a yes or no answer to what I just asked. What you're simply saying is, though, that's what we're looking at, and when it comes back to us, we will make that decision as to what it is.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Doucette, that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Once we hear all the comments from council, from the applicant, for the members of the public, we then write our recommendation report based on the information before us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar, then Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, well, I'll say it and then whoever wants to answer can answer. I get that, Mr. Veneri, that you're looking to save some time and money on this by getting kind of a blanket approval for that piece of property. But I think what I'm hearing from council is that they'd visually like to see what is there, and I'm sure the people in the audience would too. So Dan, you're saying we could approve what we're actually looking at in future, what he wants to do with the building, and then the 6 townhouses in front, and then leave it up to Mr. Veneri to then resubmit for the whatever he wants to do in the back half of it. Is that a possibility from the applicants? He could do that again, come before us
Through Mr.
again?
Mayor, absolutely, yes.
Right. And, okay, no, that's fine. That's,
Councillor Butters?
I think my question was answered. Thank you.
Mr. Veneri, you've indicated that your existing building would be potentially 40 to 60 units there. That's a significant difference, 40 or 60. How many square feet would the average unit be?
Anywhere from 500 to 600 square feet. The buildings will go 40,000 square feet. It depends on the maintenance area that's in the building, if we're using that or if we're changing that. So it'll be some engineering that will vary how the building is serviced and how many units we get in.
And this would be self-contained units, separate kitchens, separate bathrooms for each?
Some will have that. Some will just have a separate bathroom for each resident. Some will be in apartments. Some will be independent living, where they will have a room with a washroom and then have food provided to them.
Where would you put the food provider? Would you bring it in, or would you have your separate kitchen
Separate kitchen,
on site?
yes.
And what about parking for the existing building? How many units would be allowed there, Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, you see where the existing asphalt driveway is? So, Mr.
In the
Veneri.
northwest, and then
Yes, and he has legal access across the region of Niagara property, because you could see it's not totally on his property, unless Mr. Veneri would like to propose a different access, but the existing access is right there. So that site there, based on the number of units that Mr. Veneri would like to provide, would need proper parking for each unit. And
So that-
typically right now, it's 1 to 1.5 spaces per unit are required on the property.
and with that number of parking spaces, that number of vehicles going in and out, do we have to worry about additional traffic on Northland Avenue? Is that your traffic study would come forward on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, those were the comments from engineering, that a study may be required.
Well, who would make that determination?
It would be in the recommendation report,
Okay,
and then council can make the decision what would be required or not.
and do we have any idea what this block townhouse directed to Mr. Barry, how many units in the block townhouse, how many parking spaces, and do you have enough land to do all that?
There is, Mayor, it's just one, it'd be one car garage with one parking space in front. So there is room for that. And there's space for that on Northland Avenue.
And issues like fencing and sound barriers or ordinary visual barriers, that would be addressed in the site plan, Mr. Aquilini?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Does anyone have any other questions arising out of my comments? Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if you can share with us, you know, we've all seen different kinds of facilities for seniors, and some of them are just absolutely wonderful, and people are well taken care of, and they're clean, and they're there's some place that if your mom or your dad had to go there, you'd be okay with them to be there. And then there's others that leave a lot to be desired, and I just was wondering what your model is going to look like.
Well, because it's a new facility, it'd be modern and updated. We'll have advanced assistive devices for people that require them. We'll have advancements of a new building, basically, because the building of Northland Manor is a very strong structure. The inside does need upgrading and upkeeping and needs to be improved. But the services would be high standards with food and services and recreational activities. The building will also have a medical clinic as well in it, which will have a specialty in diabetic care and prevention, which will allow the residents of Port Colborne to get diabetic care from various specialists like internists, cardiac specialists that would be able to get in town rather than traveling out of town. So it would provide a specialty area in diabetic care, which is lacking in Port Colborne at this time. So the facility will be prestige in stature and looks, as well as services provided.
And if I could just follow up, and the building as it is right now with the 8 residents, would you say that you have a high quality or a high standard of living in there right now?
I'm not, I rent that building, I'm not in there, so I don't know the daily routine or activities or the stature of the building, but as Mr. Aguilina has said, is that I've not received a bad report or any negative comment from the people that have inspected the building that go on a regular basis.
So
I
you
can't comment.
you don't enter the building and check it out yourself personally to the person that you've rented it to?
I have been. When I've been, I have not noticed anything that's incorrect. I have spoken to a couple residents that had some issues, and I tried to have their issues resolved when I did meet them.
Okay, thanks, that's fine for now.
Mr. Veneria, if I can ask another question. You're going to have 40 to 60 units, and you're going to have a physician's office as well.
Yes.
You're going to have a kitchen.
Yes.
And perhaps a cafeteria or an eating area for the residents?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What else is going to go in that existing building?
That's all, I believe, Your Mayor.
And you're
There may be some internal services like hairdressing that may come in, or some type of exercise program that would come in some of the common areas, but no one.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. They're common areas.
Yeah.
What percentage of the existing building is going to be common areas, and what percentage is going to be living accommodations?
I would say somewhere between 5 to 10% will be common areas throughout the building, as well as park and outside patio.
And how long have you owned that building?
I've owned it since the region sold it, and I believe that's 2003, I think.
You lease it to an individual.
Independent company called Niagara Community Housing, I believe.
Will they continue to manage the building for you?
No, they will not. Their lease ends in December.
Okay. Again, any other questions arising out of what I have my comments? Mr. Aquilina, do you have any final comments?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor, but before it's open to the members of the public, I would like to read something.
Sure.
If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the city before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the OMB unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Perhaps you could give us the Coles Notes version of what you just said.
Mr. Mayor,
Simple.
unfortunately...
I don't mean to be facetious, I just want to simplify it so that people in the audience can understand.
Yes, basically, I have to read this verbatim. It's a requirement of the Planning Act, but what it says, if you don't speak tonight or you do not make written submissions, and if council approves it or denies it, you do not have the right to go to the next step, and that is before the Ontario Municipal Board. You need to provide written comments or make public presentation to be part of the process, unless the board, if you show up at a board hearing, may allow you to be a part of the process.
That's much better. Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. A question following from that. If an individual does not get up tonight but wishes to make a written submission, how long does he have or she have to make that submission in writing?
Mr. Mayor, we need to have the recommendation report to council. So there is a cutoff date to include those public comments. The report will not be coming back to council until the second meeting in October. So as long as we get those comments by, I'm going to say, the second week of October, we can address those in the recommendation report. If those comments don't come in, we don't know what the residents' comments are if we don't hear those this evening. The last thing I can state, there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room. If anyone would like to sign that, you will then ensure you get actual notice whatever council does decide on this application.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina, for
You're
that
welcome.
explanation. At this time, we're going to open up to the for comments from the public. We have a 10-minute maximum for individuals who wish to step forward. So at this time, madam, could you come forward, give us your full name and your address, please?
Mr. Mayor, we have a registered, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, wait a minute, we have David Lalouette is here. I'm sorry, Councillor Kenny?
We have Mr. Lalouette.
Okay.
He has registered as a speaker with the clerk, and we
Right.
have that honor. So he comes first and then the rest.
That's
Thank you.
right. David, I didn't see you down there. Come forward, please.
I just have a couple quick questions first, because I was in talks with B, and I was under the impression the fire alarm code was in violation. I'm wrong in assuming that from what I've heard here. So I just wanted to make sure that was true so I can omit it from what I was stating. I also wanted to know whether or not the city had ever had any past experiences with this individual at any other rental properties within the city of Port Colborne.
Just those two questions?
Yeah, I had just before I start my spiel of what I want to say.
Mr. Aquilina, do you have a response?
Mr. Mayor, we have not had any dealings with Mr. Veneri in the past.
And one last question. If the zoning is passed, once the zoning is passed, his future plans for this property to the south, would he not just be able to petition the OMB if there's people that have a problem with what's going to be built there? Since the zoning would be zoned for that, how can you even have a chance of stopping somebody?
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, if I follow the question, if council does approve this evening, then the only avenue for the gentleman is to be involved in the site plan process. If council turns down the application or a portion of that, then the fellow would also have an opportunity to go to the OMB if the applicant appeals council's decision.
We don't decide tonight. We're not deciding tonight.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no decision tonight.
David, can we have your address, please?
I live at 321 Knoll Street.
Thank you.
I'm the fourth property from Northland Avenue that backs onto the property that wants to be developed. First of all, I would like to thank Council for allowing me to express my concerns on this matter of rezoning the property formerly known as Northland Manor. I would also like to extend a thank you to Susan Smythe, the city planner, who got back to me about the application to build townhouses fronting Northland Avenue. I must say, after receiving the letter from the city and reviewing it, I was under the impression that this property owner was going to build a nice retirement community similar to what Lester Schultz has on Maple Avenue. So were the other residents that received the letter. After inquiring more information from the city planner, I and the rest of the property owners were shocked to find out that the immediate plans call for the construction of townhouses fronting Northland Avenue and a zoning change allowing for the current building to be used as a senior or private rental. This was never outlined as such in the letter we received. We feel that the letter was way too vague, and the current use of the building is proof that this current owner has no regard for what the established neighborhood residents or city thinks. He is using it as a low-income rental unit currently, with people coming and going daily. After being made aware of what is really being proposed for the immediate future of the property and reviewing the letter sent to us explaining the proposed zoning application changes, it's our opinion that the proposed zoning changes will detrimentally and permanently compromise the residential character of our neighborhood. The future plans, or in my opinion, false promises, of building the senior complex behind the current building is just smoke and mirrors to get the council to bite on allowing the zoning change. With the infrastructure needed in the way of sewer, water, underground hydro, traffic studies, it would cost well over $1 million before even one building could be constructed. This is a piecemeal approach, and I believe council should see through the pie-in-the-sky proposal. The current owner has demonstrated since owning this property that he has no intention of investing big money, as the building is a shadow of what it once was when the region owned it. Once the zoning change is made and he has the green light to do as he chooses as far as who he rents to, other developers are going to take notice as to what council decides, and this will set a precedence for future developers to come in and do as they please as well. The subject lands were originally part of the Niagara Region Old Age Home known as Northland Manor. The land is currently zoned to be used as a senior care complex or institutional. For the record, we are not against development, but wish to express that whatever happens with the property going forward blends with the established neighborhood, meaning single-story detached family homes be developed. Our neighborhood mainly consists of ranch-style homes, all meticulously maintained and landscaped. A lot of pride and ownership can be seen. Many of the residents have been here since their homes were built, choosing to build in an area where there weren't any townhomes and apartments in their backyards. If the proposed townhomes are to be two-story, with the bedrock being as close to the surface as it is, they will most likely choose to build on the bedrock, as this is far cheaper than blasting or hole ramming to put in basements. If this is allowed, they will look like three-story dwellings that will tower over the surrounding homes and take away the privacy that we currently enjoy, and definitely not blending in with the homes around it. Building along here will also add to the traffic and noise in the area. Currently, there is no sidewalk linking Northland to Steele Street or West Side Road. With young children living here, they will be forced to walk on the roadway unless the city takes on a capital project of building a sidewalk to connect Steele Street with West Side Road. The current proposal also must address flooding issues with water runoff, as there is no access to the storm sewer, to my knowledge, from Northland Avenue currently. If the rezoning is allowed, how many apartments will be allowed in the current building? We talked briefly about that. How will the amount of noise from the proposed apartments affect the neighborhood? Is there enough room for parking? What about the noise from cars coming and going at all hours? There are more questions than answers here that need to be addressed before a decision can be made. The current property owner has demonstrated that he doesn't care what the current property is zoned for, as he wouldn't be renting it on a daily basis to whomever shows up, which, by the way, is a legal use of the property. The property hasn't been taken care of like it was when the region owned it. He has even started storing boats on the west side of the property. If you plan to rent it out to seniors and as apartments, where are the plans for the renovations? The region abandoned the building in favor of building new, as the current building didn't meet square footage requirements for senior care. What plans does the current owner have to rectify this problem? If the region with very deep pockets felt it would be too cost prohibitive to renovate, why would the current owner feel it would be worthwhile? That's why, in my opinion, he wants the zoning change, as he can avoid the changes necessary under the current zoning. He has demonstrated that he doesn't really plan to take care of the property, as it has deteriorated a great deal since the region has left. And he also hasn't done anything to approve the curb appeal. We don't want to become a failed trial for this individual to come in and ruin an established neighborhood. If the townhouses are allowed and the current buildings become zoned for apartments, what guarantee do we have to whom they would rent to? They can choose to rent to whomever they wish. How will they access the rear of this property if they're going to develop the south section? Where will the roadway go? As it stands, the existing building is zoned for senior care and is currently being used, in my opinion, as a low-income rental. We have viewed on many occasions people riding up on their bikes, carrying their personal possessions with them. Not to discriminate, but these are not the kind of individuals that are obviously in a very stable situation in their lives, as they come and go weekly and some daily. There is a constant revolving door of people, with numerous police visits over the past year, and the most recent on September 16th. We have viewed fistfights in the parking lot, and the language that some of the people use is ridiculous. They even ride around the building on the grassed areas on their motorcycles and with their cars. The use of the property is ruining our neighborhood. Council needs to enforce the zoning bylaw that is in place and put an end to this. After being informed, oh, excuse me, he's not, so I have to omit that. Okay, so I just had to omit the part about the fire code violation here. Mr. Mayor, it wasn't that long ago that you stood right where I am, urging council to refuse an infilling request for property in your neighborhood to be severed and built upon, as you and the surrounding neighbors felt it would not fit in with the established homes in the area, which you and the surrounding neighbors were correct in your judgment. How would yourself and the rest of council feel if, after decades of living in your home and having privacy and peace in your neighborhood, now having to look out your back window to see a building that was once taken care of meticulously being let go and being used in violation of the zoning bylaw? Now compound this current use with the possibility of townhouses being built in your backyard and being rented, in my opinion, again as low income. I say low income as I don't believe this individual has any intention to rent the current building to seniors or to ever build a new senior complex that is proposed. Also, there is no request for the property to be severed to sell the townhouses, only to rent. Ask yourself if you would like to see your parent in a home that is being kept this way. I bet none of you would be okay with it. I understand it's the mayor and council's job to attract investment to the city, whether it be residential or industrial, but at what cost? Council and the mayor must ask themselves, does this fit in with the established neighborhood? No should be an easy conclusion. Council had to make a similar decision just a few years ago with a developer who wanted to develop property that would extend Franklin Avenue that abuts to this property. This developer also wanted to develop the property in a piecemeal fashion. Council, in my opinion, made the right decision to deny this developer the ability to ruin the neighborhood. I only hope that you reach the same conclusion with this developer's proposal. I just am kind of amazed at the questions that you were directing towards him, where you're asking what will this building contain, and on further pressing him, now we see that there's going to be a diabetic clinic there. So that's going to bring more traffic to the area, more cars coming in and out of place, more noise, possible hairdresser, whom will run the building.
Mr. Lallouette, you've got roughly a minute.
Okay, so these are all things that need to be addressed. I feel there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before council could even consider this. I would appreciate that you just take your time, and if you have any further questions, you could call myself, or I would be glad to come to any meeting.
We'd like to perhaps ask you a few questions now, members of council. And could we have a copy of your presentation?
Sure, I can get you a copy. Yeah, I can email it to you if you like. Yeah.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Lallouette? Mr. Danch?
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Frank.
How long you lived there?
23 years.
Was Northland Manor open when you were living there before?
Yes, it was.
You had no problems with what was going on back then?
No, you basically didn't see a soul.
Your backyards, are they all fenced so you don't have a visual at all, or do you have like a chain link?
Well, I have a hedge. Many of my neighbors' backyards are not fenced at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? There being none, thank you, Mr. Lallouette. Appreciate that. Now, maybe come back to the next inquisitor. Could I have your full name and address, please?
My name is Barbara Johnston. I live at 146 King Street here in Port Colborne. I'm here to address it. I lived at Northland Avenue for 1 year. I moved in last August of 2014 with a lot of promises what was going to take shape in the building. Mr. White was the one that rented me the place, and he told me that he owned the place with another gentleman that was a silent partner. The place is full of mold and mildew, black mold. Many people were taken to hospital because of the breathing because of it. Mr. White, his cure for black mold was just spraying a little bit of bleach and it would go away type thing. And, you know, that never happened. The last 6, 7 months out there, the facilities were supposed to be cleaned, the bathrooms and everything else, they were never cleaned. They were filthy and disgusting, and yet they would take $700 a month from a handicapped person to live in filth. And they were supposed to provide meals for these people and everything else. It was a sham. And I feel bad because there's still 3 people I really, really care about that still live out there that need a place to go. But rent is so much they got no money to do it. I got out there and it took me a year to get the last month's rent. You know, it'd be nice. All these pipe dreams come true that it's going to do. But I was told it was going to be, the kitchen was going to be up and running, everything was going to be inspected. You couldn't plug a TV in your room and a heater, and the people next door would have something plugged in, it would throw the breaker. That's all you smelt was mold and mildew when you walked in. Mr. White had drunks in there and carrying on. As the gentleman, September 16th, there was another call for the police. Many episodes when I was there. He put a lock thing on the door that you had to have a code. Well, it seemed like everybody from the outside got the code and they'd come in and do whatever they wanted. They had a kitchen for, when I lived there, 28 people to use a kitchen. 1 fridge. I'm on ODSP. My food gets stolen. I met this gentleman here that owns it. Apparently, Mr. White rents it from him, but I was told back then by him that him and Mr. White were partners. Now, Mr. White just rents from him. So what do you believe? It's a bunch of bull, as far as I'm concerned. I'd love to see something for seniors that was done properly, or low-income housing. We need that desperately in this town, not just this town, all over the place. There are people that need it. And you were talking about the fire department code. I just talked to a guy on the east side that worked there, and he left for Mr. White, and he said it does not meet all the standards of the fire code. They fixed it up when the fire people were there that the sprinkler system worked down by my room. And I got that right from the guy on the east side. Now something's got to be done in this town with them charging the money that they are for people that are in wheelchairs and 70 years old that can't feed or bite for themselves. It is nonsense. I'm not in a wheelchair yet, thank God, but I'll tell you, I feel for those that have to put up with that and breathe that stuff in. I almost died. I go to my doctor, I've been out of there 2 months. I don't need my puffers anymore. For a whole year, my doctor thought I was dying because of my breathing that stuff in on a daily basis. I addressed him once about stuff out there. He approached Mr. White. Mr. White threatens to kick me and everybody out in the street because I talked to him on concerns. So, you know, Mr. White don't get his money, you're out on the street. Mr. White don't like giving you rent receipts, but he wants the money. And Mr. White likes the boats, and he buys bikes for this kid that he's got living there that's got drug issues, and they ride all over the yards. I feel sorry for the people that live in that area out there with small kids. I was watching them many, many times with kids in the small backyard over by where you live and stuff. I'd sit out back and I'd watch things. And you know, there's no control. So I hope, you know, I would love to see something like this really happen. But as the gentleman said, after it's done, who says what he's going to rent it for? And if he's had it as long as he has, why all of a sudden last year he's doing something with it? The mold, the mildew issue, the food issue, I mean, like there's 8 people in there. Now you try to look at 28 people living there with a kitchen and a fridge trying to cook. You have 2 bathrooms that were operational, 2 showers, one was for handicapped and one was for regular people, with black mold growing in the shower and not clean.
Okay, would you like to take some questions now?
Oh, I certainly would.
A member of council? Councilor Rudders, did you raise your hand there?
No, I'm just.
Oh, she knows me.
I think you got your point across very well. Unless there's anything more you'd like to add, then perhaps we can move on to another intervention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there anyone else from the audience who would like to come forward? If I could just have your full name and address, please.
My name is John Dell. I live at 492 Northland Avenue. First of all, I'd like to say that I do encourage that the city looks at development and putting low-income housing in the right places. And I appreciate Mr. Veneri's entrepreneurship in our city. But I would like to bring my opposition to this proposal. I'm opposed to the amendment, number one, because of a lack of clarity. We have 5 things listed: private senior facility, residential, retirement home, apartment, residence, street, town dwelling, block, town housing. I believe that this has been brought forward today to cover what the violation presently is in. The violation, I believe, I'm pretty sure, is why we're here. I have 2 children that are deaf, and to see 100 more residents in that area coming and going over the course of the next determined time, I think would put my children at risk. I am also concerned because it is being operated presently as low-income housing on who is there. I'm not opposed to low-income housing, but I have, heard lots of things and seen lots of things as well. So just simply, I'm opposed to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Are there any questions of Mr. Dell from any member of council? Thank you, Mr. Dell.
Thank you.
If you have notes there, would you like to share them with us or make a copy for us?
Just scribble notes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience who would like to come forward with a comment? Yes, please come forward with your full name and address, please.
Wilma Crosby, 325 Knoll Street. I'm definitely opposed to this, but I also would like clarification. We were told that the province says you may have 50 people on a hectare, and I have no idea what that really means for that amount of property which is there. If anyone can clarify that for me, please.
Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the growth plan, it's 50 jobs or people per hectare.
Well, I don't know what that really means according to this. Can you clarify that?
Depending on the size of the property.
What, could you translate hectares into acres? Or?
Mr. Mayor, 1 hectare is 2.47 acres. 2.5 acres is 1 hectare.
And in this amount of space there, how many are there?
The size of the property, I am not aware, Mr. Veneri, do you know the size of the lot?
Almost 9 acres.
9 acres.
90 hectares.
So there's 9 acres. So divide that by 4. You could get possibly under the policies 200 people on that property.
Okay, and the province said 50, but others said less than that, right?
Mr. Mayor, the growth plan says 50 jobs or persons per hectare. Our policies in the official plan actually bring that down to 15 for low density development. When you have medium density, it's higher. High density is even higher. So the province is promoting intensification. That is what the province is doing. So the region of Niagara, their policies mirror what the province does. We are a creature of the province, so we have to comply or put in the policies that the province would like us to have. And we have that.
But you just said 15, and now you're saying you do have the same.
Mr. Mayor, it's for what the density is. So if it's low density development, we could go down to 15 per hectare. If it's higher density, we can go up to 50. We can exceed 50, but
Thank
50
you.
is...
I just don't understand all these things.
Does anyone have any questions? There being none? Anyone else wish to come forward for make a few comments?
Can I just make one more comment, Mr. Mayor?
David, we'll just find out if there's anyone else and then... Pastor? And could we have your full name and address, please? Mr. Lofthouse. Reverend Lofthouse.
Thank you. Brian Lofthouse, 450 Northland Ave. I just got a quick comment. Appreciate all that's been said and done on both sides. I just really believe that disclosure, complete disclosure of all that's going to happen, size, height, all of that needs to be in place before we go on. That's just a simple comment. I'm not going to jump one way or another. Lots of stuff's been said, but I want to hear full disclosure, not just partial. And I think that's where I have a grave concern.
Mr. Reverend Lofthouse, just wait for a minute. Is there any questions of the intervener? There being none, thank you. I'm looking across the audience. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Yes, sir. Don't be shy. Full name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Jim Whitnall. I live at 329 Knoll Street. I'd like to echo a very similar comment to Brian, is that I think it's very important to understand what the full picture is before agreeing to part of it, simply because if we don't know what that full picture is, we don't want there to be any surprises in the future.
Any questions of Mr. Whitnall, members of council? Thank you, Mr. Whitnall. Appreciate it. Call once again. Does anyone else wish to come forward? Okay, Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For council's information, what I will do as part of the recommendation report, once all of the comments are received, and if there's any additional comments, we will then roll those into a recommendation report that will be before council once that report is in a position to come to council. As we heard this evening, there's a lot of comments from the public. Mr. Veneri's got some homework to do. Staff has some homework to do, and that recommendation report will be brought forward to council at a near future meeting. We'd like to get this resolved one way or another. We have an existing violation, we know that. As I mentioned, there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room if you wish to be notified of council's decision on this application, as well as we can inform you when council will have the application before them. You could do that as well. Mr. Mayor, that is the projection. I don't want to hold firm on that date based on the numerous comments that are probably forthcoming. So sooner the better, but no guarantee.
We'll notify those who have recorded their name and address on the sheet at the back of the room.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we will.
Okay, we won't speculate as to when it may be, but...
no, we will give advance notice once council has the agenda before them. It'll be on the Thursday.
And I wish to intervene. Mr. Lalowette wanted to comment again, and I jumped over him to allow you to make your final comments. You're good, Mr. Lalowette?
No, I just wanted to shed light on the fact that the lady here said that there is fire code violations. I believe that city should have the fire inspector revisit the area. And since the property is being used illegally, will it be a cease and desist order placed against this property being used for what it is currently being used for?
Thank you, Mr. Lalowette. Councillor Butters, you had another comment as well?
Yeah, and then I lost it because you were talking about something else, so what the heck was it?
I apologize.
I got a good memory, but it's a little short some days. Now I remember. So when the folks get notified, they will be able to pick up the report when?
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, if the council meets on the Monday, the report will be available on the Thursday prior to.
So anybody that would like to read that report would either be able to go online or pick it up in the planning office on the second floor. Is that correct?
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kenny, you had a comment, and Councillor Desmarais?
Yeah, and just one, Your Worship, to Mr. Aquilina. Now that you've heard from a resident who actually lived in that building, who tells you about the substandard living in that building, how can we, as a planning department, part of the city, allow that to continue, is what I'd like to know. Because I think, here's somebody that had to move out. She moved out because of health conditions. She tells you it's filthy. The electrical is poor. Two people can't even, one fridge. Bathroom's filthy. She's telling you because she lived there. She's experienced it. And I want to know how we, as a city, can still permit it. I don't get that. I honestly don't get that. Thank you.
Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. Dan, I would echo everything that Councillor Kenny said. I would expect that we would have an immediate building inspection, and if the conditions are found to be such as they've been related tonight, that there would be an immediate evacuation of that building. There's just no way that we should be allowing people in this city to live in that manner. That should just not be able to happen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Desmarais. That would appear that concludes our public meeting. Unless there's further comments, Mr. Aquilina?
One more comment, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I have to do this again for the record. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request of notice of the passage of the bylaw will be given such notice. Mr. Mayor, this does conclude the meeting on the Planning Act before you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're adjourned. We're going to move into our regular meetings. This was a Planning Act meeting for a proposed rezoning. You're welcome to stay. Otherwise, we'll just take about a 2 or 3 minute recess for those who wish to leave. And could I have a motion to adjourn this meeting, please? Motion by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Mr. Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
No, Mr. Mayor, no addendum items.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to confirm the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Main. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Adoption of minutes. Disclosures of interest. Is there any disclosures of interest this evening? And moving on, there being none, so noted. Adoption of minutes, the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, 2115, held on September 14th, 2015. Could I have a motion to adopt those minutes? Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Desmarais. Any comments, questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'd like to move on to determination of items requiring separate discussion.
Items for separate discussion?
Yes.
Item 14.
Item 14. Are there any other items? Councillor Elliott.
1 and 3.
1 and 3. Any other items, Council? Oh, Councillor Main?
Yeah, number 8, please.
Number 8. Are there any other items requiring discussion? There being none, I call for approval of items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Butters, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have a presentation this evening from Fire Chief Cartwright.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Tonight, I've got a presentation with regards to carbon monoxide alarms. As most of you may know, next week is Fire Prevention Week. The kickoff is this Saturday from 10 till 2 at the Fire Hall. It's an open house. Public is welcome to attend. There'll be some hot dogs and some other things and some games for the kids. We'd like to see as many people there as possible. This particular presentation, it's a video presentation. It's about 7 minutes in length. It's a little bit dated because they speak to the fact about carbon monoxide alarms are recommended. They now are mandatory in the province of Ontario, and they are required in all areas of the home in which you sleep. So it's a video that certainly speaks well to what the results can be. Don?
I'm a huge advocate on carbon monoxide safety and carbon monoxide alarms, simply because what happened to me was life-altering, devastating, and preventable. My home filled with carbon monoxide on a cold, cold winter night, unbeknownst to me and my family, because we did not have an alarm that alerted us to a potential problem. And we just continued to get sicker and sicker and sicker throughout the course of the evening, to the point that by the following morning, we were so poisoned we didn't know that anything was going wrong. And the result of all of that was that my two youngest children, 16-month-old Zachary and 4-year-old Nicholas, died in their sleep, in their beds. I knew very little about carbon monoxide prior to our tragedy. I knew what it was. I knew people killed themselves with it. And that, so I knew it was a deadly thing. I knew it came out of automobiles, but I really didn't understand the rest of it.
Carbon monoxide is considered to be the #1 cause of acute poisoning deaths in the United States. There are no symptoms when you are first getting carbon monoxide into your body, unlike most other types like mercury or other type of poisons, volatile solvents and the like, which can cause irritation where it enters your body. If you breathe it in, you cough, for example. If you get it on your skin, you get a rash overall. If you happen to drink it or eat it, you throw up. With carbon monoxide, you don't get a rash and you don't cough. It's not irritating.
I was continually bringing my children to the doctor. I'm talking about November, December, continually. We would wake up in the morning and my kids would be so lethargic and so ill. I mean, they would just basically be not themselves. And I would call the doctor and I'd say, I got 3 little boys and myself. We do not feel well. By the time we'd get to the doctor's office, my kids would be running around, playing with all the toys and the sick kids, and the doctor would go, lady, are you a hypochondriac?
The early symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning may be very nonspecific and mild. A little bit of dizziness, lightheadedness, feeling weak in the knees, a little bit of loose stools, not quite diarrhea, but just loose stools, feeling like food poisoning, a little nauseated. It can progress to neurologic symptoms such as lethargy, such as seizures or convulsions, and coma and death.
I had been going in for sinus infection, what I thought was a sinus infection. It was an extremely horrible headache that just would not go away. And the doctors had tried me for a month. I'd been on like 3 or 4 different antibiotics. Nothing was touching it.
It's a very, very difficult diagnosis to make when it's not obvious on presentation. And that's another reason that fatalities can occur. The effects of carbon monoxide poisoning, especially acute carbon monoxide poisoning, are reversible if the individual seeks emergency care right away. Oxygen has to be administered in various forms right away to remove carbon monoxide from the blood and thus overcome the cellular suffocation that can occur.
The 3 of us got rushed to a hyperbaric chamber in Minneapolis and got the carbon monoxide out of our system, which was amazing in itself. In a short period of time, you could go from incoherent to sinus infection gone, everything, wide awake. And then reality hit. And what it was, how preventable it was, how unnecessary it was, and how life-altering it was. And it was all because I did not have something that said, there's something wrong here. Help yourself before it's too late. It was too late by the time we knew something was wrong.
Carbon monoxide alarms are currently today in about 12% of the homes across the nation. Unfortunately, they're not in the building codes across the nation and not required like smoke alarms are in every new home being built. The carbon monoxide alarm very simply activates upon buildup of carbon monoxide in a building. The smoke alarm, on the other hand, activates anytime there is smoke being produced from open fire.
A smoke alarm is designed to alert you to an impending emergency, and the sooner you respond and get out of the house, the better. A carbon monoxide alarm, on the other hand, is designed to give you an indication that there is a buildup of carbon monoxide, and it's important for you to respond, but sometimes your symptoms may not even appear for hours after the alarm sounds.
The medical justification for setting carbon monoxide detector alarm limits at 70 parts per million are several aspects. Number one, that it's a potentially lethal level when one gets a little bit higher than 70 parts per million. Number two, that one is still aware of what is going on, and so that one can react appropriately when these detectors go off.
Carbon monoxide poisoning can be prevented by having your appliances, such as your furnace or water heater, inspected by professionals each year. Also, it's important to make sure that your fireplace chimney is not clogged, and make sure that motor vehicles are never operated continuously in an attached garage. CO alarms should be placed outside the sleeping area so they can be easily heard even when you're sleeping. Remember that having at least one carbon monoxide alarm is very important. Having one on each level is even better.
If the carbon monoxide detector does go off, first of all, never disable it. Second of all, one should evacuate the premises and ventilate the premises. Eventually, at some point, it should be checked out by a professional individual that can identify the source. The source always should be identified whenever the carbon monoxide detector goes off.
Had I had a carbon monoxide alarm in my home, it would have went off long before I had any of the symptoms even. And we would have known there was a problem. We would have fixed the problem, which was a faulty furnace, which cost us a total of like $1,500 to fix. My whole life is entirely changed. I have a 15-year-old son now who was 5 when this happened. He has no brothers. I should be raising a large family, and I'm, raising a single child. And every day I live with the fact that this was so preventable. And so I'm out there saying, people, you need a carbon monoxide alarm in your home to protect yourselves from the unknown. There's not a single death that couldn't have been prevented by a little knowledge of what it is and how it happens, and by having a carbon monoxide alarm in your home telling you ahead of time. Every single death could be prevented.
Thank you, Chief. Any further comments?
Yes, Your Worship. In the province of Ontario, as I mentioned earlier, they are mandatory now. And don't think it can't happen here. We did have a death a few years ago. In fact, he was a Niagara Regional Police officer. He died in his home in the city. And just within the last month, EMS was dispatched to a home in the area, in our city. And they carry alarms on their medical bags when they go in, because they had a near miss in this city a number of years ago on Steele Street. So they carry them right on their bags, and they went into the house for a medical call, and sure enough, the alarms went off, called us, and there was a problem with one of the appliances in the home. We have the same alarms on our medical bags and all of our trucks. as well as our fire prevention officer wears one with him, because he could be in doing inspections and or in a home doing smoke alarm inspections or a multi-residential building, and he could run into the same problem. So we are trying to protect ourselves as best we can. One thing I will mention, they talked about a couple of things that cause carbon monoxide. Something that we found, I think on about 4 occasions since I've been here over the last number of years, people have a tendency in the fall of the year to bring their batteries in from their boats and so on, and they'll keep them in the basement, and then they'll charge them up in the spring of the year to put them back in their boats. We've had one call just recently, just within the last few weeks, where that occurred. They give off carbon monoxide, and they will set off alarms, and so it's something else for the people in the community to be aware of. But thank you.
Chief, the boat battery giving off carbon monoxide, is that while it's being charged or while it's sitting in storage?
Your Worship, the Council, it seems to be that when the acid becomes active, it's giving it off. So it's when you're charging it, not just sitting still.
Thank you. Any other questions of Chief Cartwright? Will this video be played this Saturday during Fire Prevention Day?
Your Worship, that's correct. We're going to have a number of different videos there that will be available for people to sit and watch.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there being none, are there any delegations, Mr. Clerk?
None this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. My mayor's report, just a couple things that I participated in on your behalf. One was on behalf of, in this case, Barb Butters, who was the co-chair of the Dorothy Rungling Airport, which is now called Niagara Central. In any event, they had a sort of a dedication event at her residence. She's 104 years old, but very, very spry. You wouldn't think she was 104, but she was acknowledged by both the province and the federal government, and Barb and I will be providing a certificate for her as well. Also, this past weekend was the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, and there was a commemorative ceremony sponsored by, I think it's 434 Wing or 242 Aviation Association. We were represented by air cadets from Port Colborne, as well as cadets from various other parts of the region, and it was held at the Welland Legion. That concludes my report, events that I've taken part of on your behalf. Perhaps we have a report from Mr. Berry from the region of Niagara.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak tonight. I know you've had a long meeting so far and more to come, so I'll try to be brief as always. I want to give the council a heads up that the region has a Niagara Investment in Culture program in place right now for both local municipalities and nonprofit organizations. The deadline for the application is October 15th, and it can be found on the region's website. The program could fund up to 75% of the project, so it's a good opportunity for either local municipalities and or nonprofit organizations to take advantage of that. Recently, the region has done some exciting work with regards to establishing a procedural bylaw review committee. And I know that the clerk probably would appreciate it, but I'm part of that committee, and there is rationale for it in terms of making meeting procedures a little tighter to allow the flow and efficiency of meetings to occur. Under that banner may include code of conduct review as well. That will happen, whether it's in tandem with the procedural bylaw or not is still up for discussion. I wanted to also mention that the combined sewer overflow, or CSO, control policy is in place and intended to facilitate shared funding with the region and local area municipalities to help mitigate the impacts of wet weather events. And I know certainly the engineering department here is very well aware. But in particular, the 2015 budget approved $6.6 million for CSO partnership, and to date, about $4.6 million has been committed. In other words, there's still $2 million of funding on the table for local area municipalities. So if there's any projects identified for the city, certainly encourage them to apply for that combined shared funding. Last month, I attended AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in Niagara Falls, hosted over 1,500 delegates, and it was the first time it was hosted in Niagara Falls, so we're happy to have them, both from a tourist perspective and generating additional economic opportunities for those in Niagara. I did happen to meet with Minister Ted McMeekin. He's the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And some of the items we discussed are, of course, local, important to local municipalities in the region in terms of both funding, planning reviews, and housing, social housing needs in Niagara. Finally, just a quick update on 2016 budget progress at the region. We're currently completing a thorough scrub of each and every line item in historical actuals. We're identifying non-mandatory programs that could provide sustainable savings and exploring new ways to deliver mandatory programs. We're currently examining service levels as well as identifying additional revenue opportunities. And October 15th, we will be reviewing our 10-year capital plan. That's my report, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barrick. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Barrick. Dave, normally it's your practice to leave after your presentation. I do thank you for your presentation, by the way. But I would ask that this time, if you could stay until I've spoken to the councillors' issues, because there's a possible regional involvement in what I'm going to be speaking about.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. And so it is typically my practice to leave after the councillor items, so I will be here for that for sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? David, you just spoke briefly on the issue of the your procedural bylaw, the code of conduct. Twice council has voted down the issue of integrity commissioner. They had one in the previous council, and then this council has chosen not to put one forward. But the procedural bylaw and the code of conduct would go a little way to doing the job of an integrity commissioner, would they not? So that prevent some of the situations that brought the issue back to council again, your code of conduct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that that is part of the intent. Now, to be clear, the code of conduct is an appendix to the procedural bylaw. So my personal view is the procedural bylaw in full is examined all at the same time. However, there are those that want to examine the code of conduct completely separate. So I'm hoping we can review the whole thing as one package as it currently is today. And to your point with regards to integrity commissioner, yeah, it's been discussed and reconsidered. So I think council is very clear that at this point, spending money on an integrity commissioner maybe is not warranted. However, there is an opportunity to perhaps tighten up the code of conduct, and so that's what we're going to attempt to do.
Thank you. And I shouldn't have spoken to you between the two meetings, but it reminded me of another issue that I would like some direction from our council, and that's the position on the election of our regional chair. It was the election of a regional chair generally was not supported at the committee level last week, but I understand it will come forward again, possibly at our meeting this week. And I thought the question not to Mr. Barrick, but to my fellow councillors. I did not support an elected regional chair, and I did so on the behalf of the city of Port Colborne, but I would like input from yourselves as to whether you are supportive of that position, my position on that issue, or whether you feel otherwise. Any comments, please? Because I may be required to make a final decision this week. Councillor Bodner.
I'd support your decision, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Desmarais.
I would also support it, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments? Mr. Elliott, thank you.
Sure.
We're not going to a vote, just a consensus. But the consensus is building.
I think I've always been one that would support having it as at large. I know what it takes into account that you've got people from larger centers that you don't even have to campaign Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and Welland to garner support and enough votes to do it. to win. You may not get a person from the outlying areas, smaller communities. That being said, it does open it up for the general public to vote for a chair who sets the tone for the region. We're always talking about transparency and openness, and I guess the one thing that bothers me is our regional councillors elect the chair from within, and yet it's a private vote. Why don't we get to know who the regional councillors voted for? I mean, it's a secret ballot to vote to elect the chair, and why isn't the public allowed to know who they voted for? I elected you. I want to know who you voted for chair. It's a secret ballot. The ballots are destroyed right after. Why can't that be open and transparent? All of your meetings are recorded votes. Everything you vote on now is recorded, so that's open and transparent, except the vote for the chair. I don't think that people had an opportunity to voice their opinions on it, the general public. Put it out the next election. Ask the people if they'd like to. I don't even know if the general public knows exactly what the regional chair does and what role they play. I think it's somebody that sits and runs the meetings and acts as a chair, and the general public really doesn't know what that role is. If it was explained to them, maybe they would like to have the option to vote on it. But if you don't ask the people their opinion, and you only ask regional council, that's your 32 opinions. That's not the 440,000 people that live in Niagara. So put it to them. Let them answer you. And until you do that, to say that the 32 people that are elected are going to decide who votes for the chair, it's a pretty small circle. So that's my opinion.
Anyone else have a comment? Councillor Butters?
Yes, I'd just like to hear your rationale for that decision.
There'd be no opportunity, in my opinion, for anyone from the southern tier, especially our community, of becoming a regional chair. Okay, the north end, population-wise, St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, was certainly, they alone can outvote the other smaller communities. Admittedly, we've never had a regional chair elected by the larger population. We have had regional chairs from smaller communities. There were appointments initially. John Campbell, I think, was our first one. He was appointed by the province. I think the most previous chairs, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Burrows was from Niagara Lake, and he was elected again by the councillors at hand. But he was successful coming from a small community. The cost of a campaign would be outside the financial capacity of most individuals. As a consequence, they estimated at roughly $300,000 to run a campaign for a regional chair. So if individuals generally would not have that money, they would have to solicit it from whomever. Predominantly large business, big business, and big business then might have an undue influence on the direction that chair may take. And that concerned me significantly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what, I don't have a problem with the regional councillors electing a chair. What I did notice this past one, though, is that what I would like to see kind of eliminated, and I don't even know how you would do it, is what I don't like is the party politics involved. Because at municipal level, I always saw that as more of a, that's the place where anybody can run and work hard and either get elected or don't, and the people make that decision. But when the politics of a party politics starts to kind of infiltrate our levels of municipal government, whether it be local or the region, that concerns me. And that's what I saw happening in this past one, and that's just my opinion, and maybe some people would disagree, but I don't like to see that. I would rather see, I mean, we've got good people who run on their own merits. Like, I don't think then they're beholden to something that I don't think belongs in municipal politics, and that's how I feel. But I support your decision, Mr. Mayor, in what you've
My
decided so
decision
far.
was not to have an elected regional chair. Is that, I mean, you were on
Correct.
both sides of the issue, but Councilor Demeray, did you have a comment? No. Mr. Maine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick one. I don't have an issue with it, other than I'd like to see it be spread around a little bit, that you can't, say it was St. Catharines. Okay, fine, you've got the regional chair in St. Catharines this term. Well, the next term comes around, St. Catharines is out, maybe it's Niagara Falls' turn, or maybe it's Fort Erie's turn, or maybe it's Port Colborne's turn. Like, move the area around. And I know a lot of people say, well, maybe there's not as good people down here, but there's good people everywhere. And I could support that if they did
a rotation.
Did a rotation. I think it would just
But that wouldn't allow for the a vote at large. That's right. Okay, Councilor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but it would allow, if you made a decision as a regional council that one term it is the northern end and the next term it's the southern, you would have a fair way of doing that. And I think it should be elected. The people who were voted into the regional position, such as our representative, the people voted him to make the right decision. They supported you, Your Worship, to make the right decisions. And I don't believe there should be an appointment. I believe it should be elected. And if that's a great idea that Councillor Maine has, and maybe that should be suggested, that you do that on a rotating basis, that so that it's not always the ones that have the most people sitting at the table, but that it's decided ahead of time that the next time you have your choice of so many, and that's who you vote for. Thank you.
Okay, but if you have an election at large, everyone in the region gets to cast a ballot. And that doesn't allow for one term from the south, one term from the north. If you allowed your regional councillors to make the decision, then it can be only perhaps nominations from the south or the north would be entertained, depending on what rotation it was. But again, that's a little more complicated than one or the other. Anything from the gentleman on my left? Okay, thank you very much for the consensus. Mr. Elliott, not Mr. Elliott, Mr. Barrick, do you have a comment on the issue?
Well, since you asked, Mr. Mayor, just to be...
like to be fair,
clear,
democratic.
I also chaired the committee, and it was a recorded vote, and I also did not support that resolution. It is coming up at full council, as you know, for a full council vote. I believe at committee was 13-6. And in fairness on the partisan politics discussion, I think it's fair to say it was a really mixed response. I mean, they're all free votes there, and everyone's representing their communities as well as you have asked here. So I commend you for that. And it will be discussed again on Thursday, so we'll see how it shakes out. And if I may, just to be clear, in my view, I didn't get elected to do some navel gazing. It was job creation, keep property taxes low. And this item has been discussed term after term after term. And so while a healthy discussion, and there's been plenty of them, I don't want to see it become a distraction from the real issues as to what I anyway got elected for. And so I won't be sidetracked by this type of discussion, and I will be focused. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. Moving on now to councillors and items. Do you have any issues or inquiries you'd like to bring forward? Councillor Demeray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. First, I would like to thank all the people from the East Village who have come and sat patiently this evening waiting for this time to come. Thank you so much. I would now like to ask council to entertain a motion, if you will. I've had several meetings with my community, with the people of the East Village. Two in particular in the last week, where residents are reporting an increasing incidence of crime, property standards violation, transients through the neighborhood, and a general lack of response from city officials and police. The most recent, these are a list of the most recent complaints. It's by far not all of them, but the most recent. Drug dealers increasing. Now even using children to run the parks and schools as drug mules. 13-year-old boy. A new meth lab in the community. Domestic violence. People living in substandard housing. Just a week ago, a fight in the street where hammers were used as weapons. Break, enters, and theft, both vehicles and homes. Property standard concerns, which appear to be unheard, but I do believe it is a lack of communication. Vandalism, an increase in graffiti. Needles and other drug-related items found in parks and on properties. An owner of a rental property with a failed plumbing system dumping waste into the city streets and drains. Same owner owns a few properties, selling the use of addresses for those seeking social assistance and for other criminal uses. Dogs running loose throughout the neighborhood, even quite aggressive breeds, no muzzles. Very loud motorcycles, dirt bikes racing through the neighborhood. Individuals walking around drinking alcoholic beverages with no mind to rules, to what laws are. Generally a blatant disregard for the rights of others, like blaring music, revving engines, loud arguments, screaming foul language in the streets. Unplated vehicles left for long periods of time just junking up the neighborhood. Garbage bags, boxes, unwanted furniture put out to the curb with complete disregard, not picked up. I don't know if they were ever called for or what has happened there, but just not picked up. Pools that exist in yards without fencing. Shopping carts. On almost every street you can find a few abandoned shopping carts. These are just a few things. The list is longer. If you can imagine it, the list is longer. Now, like I say, this is just a list out of the two most recent community meetings. I can't even believe it myself. With some of the things I heard shocked even me, and I was aware of a lot of this. I've been working on them for a couple of years now. Residents call City Hall. They call the police. They call Crime Stoppers, but they see no change. Now, just imagine the frustration of getting to the point where you have to make these calls, and then you sit in your window and you watch, and you see nothing happening on the property that you called about. Do you really think anybody cares? Do you really think anybody's listening? You absolutely do not. So, it's come to the point where it's resulted now in a handful of people taking on the problems themselves. They're forming a vigilante-type response, where they're arming themselves to go out and patrol in the neighborhood. Now, this is nothing should ever get this far out of control to provoke such an extreme response. I've spoken with Staff Sergeant Chris Healy, who immediately did increase the police presence in the community, and that has had a little bit of an effect, but there's just so much more needed. The concerns that I've listed are not unknown to city staff. I've spoken to several city staff members. It's not unknown to the police, not unknown to Port Cares. It's other social service agencies are quite familiar with this. The fire department's familiar with them. We have these kinds of problems in other areas of the city, but nowhere do we have a neighborhood that's simply under siege the way that it is in the East Village. These problems have escalated over the last 2 years. It's gotten to the point where it's completely out of control. One person can't deal with this. So at this point, help is needed, without a doubt. Our current policies are not adequate. Our procedures don't meet the needs of those people who are facing these situations. Our timeframes are just absolutely unrealistic, our response times. So what I'm asking for is for Council to allow for the creation of a neighborhood improvement task force. This task force would focus on the East Village with the aim of tackling the issues effectively, dealing with them, putting them down into manageable places where people can be allowed to live a decent, normal life. That's what I'm asking for. At this point, it's a matter of allowing staff and staff time and whatever resources are needed there to start to look at the issue. I would hope that the CAO would take it on to create a terms of reference and decide how many people should sit on this committee, but definitely this should be open to involving all the agencies needed to deal with the issue. But it's time that the city creates this kind of task force that will think outside of the box. We have accepted policies and procedures. They're not working. So let's put them aside for a while. Stay within the law, but at the same time, address the needs. This is a group of people who deserve to live a decent, normal life. They're not creating the problems, but they have to live with them daily. Their kids grow up in that. And what happens when you grow up in that situation? You either become it, or quite the opposite happens, and you be a person who is intolerant of that sort of thing and of the people who create it. And that's not necessarily a good thing either. There's no room for intolerance. So I ask that council consider this evening, allow a task force to be created, and empower the CAO to get that started by terms of reference and a structure of committee.
Do you have a motion which you wish to present?
That is my motion, and I will be happy to send it.
I think the clerk needs to record something a little more succinctly.
Okay.
Just simply, you wish to create
All right.
a neighborhood task force?
I'd like leave of council to allow for the creation of a neighborhood improvement task force to focus on the East Village with the aim of tackling the issues and effectively dealing with them. Good enough?
Good.
For the motion? Yeah.
Is there a seconder for that? Well, first of all, we have to have leave to
leave
deal with
first.
that motion.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Doucette, second by Councillor Bodnar for leave. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And now the motion.
Now the
And that
motion.
would be the motion.
Yes.
Okay, the motion would be to create the task force. Pardon me?
The CAO.
For the CAO.
To be directed to?
To be directed to
Create the terms of reference?
create the terms of reference and structure of a neighborhood improvement task force.
Okay. Any-
East Village.
Seconded by Councillor Doucette. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Councillor Butters?
I think it's important to attach a bit of a timeline to this too.
Yeah, yes.
It sounds like this has reached critical mass and needs to be done like yesterday.
Mr. CAO, do you have a...
Tomorrow? Is that okay?
Through your worship to Councillor Butters, I was thinking that the terms of reference would come back to the council in the form of a staff report. I'd like to say that I could do it for the first meeting in October, which is Tuesday the 13th because of Monday Thanksgiving. But I'm going to try for the 13th, and if not, the 28th. Sorry, 26th.
I
yes.
think 13th would be the maximum. I'm just wondering.
Yes.
Can we do it
October.
Before the next cycle? Is that our very next council meeting? What is the date of that?
Tuesday the 13th.
13th? Okay. All right, everyone, the amendment to that motion? Friendly amendment? Do
you want to put a friendly member, or shall I?
It's included.
We'll just include it in the original one.
Okay. Again, yes? Go ahead, Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One of the issues and one of the things that we could do, and I've already spoken a little bit to the new CAO about this, and I believe we need to start looking at this with property standards and bylaws. We are driven by a complaint system.
Yeah.
One person next door to you gets a complaint, and the person next door to them could be 3 times worse, and the only individual they seem to look at is the person that got the complaint. It is time that our bylaw people, and I've talked about this, and I've talked about this, and they keep telling me they can't do it, and after all I'm concerned, I won't say what I think of it. It's time for our people to go out, and as they see an infraction, they address the infraction. And in this area here, especially, okay? In this area here especially, it's going to be critical. We're not going to get all the complaints that we need to identify and rectify the problem. We need to have our people out there
trying to help rectify the problem as well. And waiting for the complaint to come in is not good enough anymore. It's not good enough. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Any further comments? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I sort of apologize to you that this situation has reached the point that it is, and that we will do as a city council and administration whatever we can to rectify the situation as quickly as possible. Thank you. Okay, moving on the agenda. Staff responses. Whoops. Oh. Ladies, and gentlemen, if they have a comment, please come forward. Generally, I only comment at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how much my comments at the information meeting that we had previously would hold any weight, so I'm going to ask at this meeting in regards to the property at Northland where there are people living, and we heard tonight, in substandard conditions, that we actually do send somebody out there to inspect that. You know, I brought it up. I mean, we had a person telling us, I could not even believe all this was happening, and the fellow, the owner, standing there and trying to pretend that he didn't know anything about it, that he had someone renting that property for him. But he knows about it. Mr. Aquilina and I talked before, and he said he can say he's not responsible, but he is responsible. And I just think we need to send somebody out to inspect the very things that she complained about. And if I could somehow have that done through Mr. Aquilina's department, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Aquilina? Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through you to Councillor Kenny. Some of the issues that we heard this evening are not ones that the municipality can get involved with. Those are more the region, the public health. But based on the comments that we heard this evening, the region, what they do is they monitor health within a dwelling. If it has to do with mold or any sort of environmental condition that is unsafe, that's where we notify public health on behalf of the region. The other issues that I can confirm is that there are no fire or building code violations in that building. I can have fire, and I can ask that fire also once again go out there, but they have been out there numerous times, and there are no issues with respect to fire-related matters, nor are there any building code matters. So I think the main issues that we heard tonight is to inform the region of Niagara about the public health concerns that were shared with us this evening.
Councillor Cartwright, Chief.
If I could, Your Worship, just to council, I can assure you that fire prevention was out there not this past week, but the week before. When I initially received a complaint from a member of council last December, that we weren't even aware that that building was occupied at that time, we went in immediately. The sprinkler system, fire alarm system, and standpipe system was not working. They were given immediate orders to fix it, or we were going to shut them down. They did respond to that, and they have recertified the systems within the building. One thing that I did pick up on this evening, though, was the issue around hydro. We were not aware up until tonight that there were issues with hydro, and I had a conversation with another member of council in between the meetings. I think where that comes from is that the building now is being used for different purposes than it was originally built and designed for, which then would speak to the fact that you're going to blow breakers, you're going to do those types of things because there's different appliances in rooms that were never there before. But I'll certainly have fire prevention follow that up tomorrow.
Thank you, Chief. And Mr. Mayor, then could we have Mr. Aquilina's office then notify the health unit that we'd like an inspection to take place?
Oh, definitely.
Thank you.
Mr. Aquilina, you're good with that?
Mr. Mayor, yes, and I was just informed by Councillor Barrick that the region of Niagara has been through that building. Not sure of the time, but they are aware, but we can notify them again as well.
And I suppose Councillor Barrick and myself will follow up the letter that you will write. If you could provide us both with copies, so we'll know what you've said, and we can perhaps go directly to the department. Okay. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Last spring, I presented a motion and tried to get people to give us a four-way stop at the corner of Canali and Elizabeth Street. I know that over the summer, there have been at least a couple of accidents. One of them was with our own people here at staff at City Hall that winded up with an accident there. I just received another email. Just got home and I just received another email. And I'm just going to give just a little piece of it. As you are aware, there desperately needs to be a four-way stop in place at Kalali Street East and Elizabeth Street. I know this was brought up to the city's attention last year, but many residents believe the outcome was terribly incorrect. I'm putting a motion on the floor that there be a four-way stop there. I'm going to have to ask for leave for that. But more and more people are coming to me, more and more, I'm getting more and more emails of this nature. There is a serious concern with not only the children crossing, because we have a crossing guard there, but also seniors and other people crossing there. And there are people that seem to think that as they get close to that corner, they need to speed up because they're going to have to slow down when they get to St. Therese. Okay? So they speed up a little bit to try to make up the time in there. There is a serious danger involved in that corner. And I'm asking for leave from this council to present that and to have it done. And I don't want to study, I don't want to know about it, I want it done, period. That's it, that's all. I've received, all summer I've been receiving emails like that. The community wants it, and I feel the community should have it.
You've made that motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? For leave? For leave?
For leave.
For leave.
Yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Desmarais. You have a question, Councillor Butters?
Yes, I have a question.
This is only for leave.
Usually, this is for leave?
Yes. We'll have a
Okay.
question after.
I'll question after.
Okay. Motion for leave to, for Councillor Doucette to introduce a motion respecting the intersection of Elizabeth and Kalali.
Yep.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Now, would you like to in fact make the actual motion?
The actual motion is that we as a city move to have a four-way stop placed at the corner of Kalali Street East and Elizabeth Street. And that be done as soon as possible so that the safety of the community be
Okay, as soon as
dealt
possible.
with, yes. Okay.
I think that's enough. Councillor Desmarais, were you going to second that? Any further comments or questions? Councillor Butters?
Isn't it usually, don't we usually have like some kind of a staff report that comes back to us before we just like start putting up stop signs in places? And if it warrants it, because there's been further accidents there, then we should be able to support it through that process. Because what I'm kind of concerned about here is that we just like make that decision, and if it's not warranted, doesn't that put the city in some kind of a liability situation? And I'm going to ask
Councillor Hanson, can you,
to Mr.
Councillor
Hanson or
Director Hanson, can you
Mr. Hanson,
address
perhaps,
that, please?
what that would look like.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We did a report, I believe, a year ago on this intersection. We did review the warrants. We reviewed the sight lines. We reviewed the collision, vehicle collision reports. And at that time, the intersection did not meet the warrants, provincial warrants for a four-way stop. And I would doubt, we could certainly take another look at that, but I doubt that the warrants have changed. There's insufficient numbers of vehicles there and insufficient number of collisions to meet the warrants.
And are there ramifications if we proceeded to order a four-way stop to be established at that intersection? What are the implications when your warrants are not adequate or not sufficient to warrant the installation of the four-way stop?
Mr. Mayor, the warrants are established to provide municipalities with guidance in terms of safety and vehicular movement for four-way stops. Certainly, in meeting the warrants at any particular intersection, two major streets, and the warrants for a four-way stop provides a safer environment for the vehicles and for the pedestrians themselves. So certainly that makes the municipality in a very good position in terms of future liability for accidents. There is a concern that if a four-way stop restriction is put in without meeting the warrants, that it puts the, and if there were a collision there due to the fact that a different type of collision occurred due to the four-way stop, it does put the municipality in a more tenuous position. If in fact it was taken to court, any case was taken to court whereby it was deemed that the four-way stop was the result of the accident. So that would be a legal process that we can't comment on, but I would just say to be very cautious in installing a four-way stop or a set of traffic signals, for instance, that do not meet the provincial warrants, because it always puts the municipality in a tenuous position.
Councillor Demery, then Councillor Main.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Hanson, did we not just do that at on Sugarloaf? Did that meet the provincial warrants?
Through Mr. Mayor, that four-way stop that's being installed this week, it was directed by council. Council did not ask for a report or an analysis on whether it met the warrants.
Okay, I would just like to say that the most recent email I have on this as well, I have been getting barraged by emails as well as Councillor Doucette about that particular intersection. This is from a couple who bought their home last year, and in the past year have witnessed 3 accidents at that intersection, all of which involve police or firefighters or paramedics, so there was emergency response. But they've also witnessed accidents that have not gone reported because the sufficient damage level wasn't met. So we have a problem at that intersection. Whether we want to see it in our study or not, it's there. So I think we need to look at this very, very carefully. I would definitely support Councillor Doucette here.
Councillor Hanson, do you have here we go again. Director Hanson, do you have statistics on the number of accidents at that intersection?
Mr. Mayor, we're advised on a monthly basis. We get copies of all the vehicular collision reports throughout the city, and we keep those on a database, and we can provide, that database is used as analysis for any types of traffic concerns that come from the public or from council. So we use those statistics to analyze that. And as part of the provincial warrants, there are a number of accidents that sort of set a threshold for the warrants in determining whether the four-way stop may be appropriate in each case.
But you don't have the actual facts of the number of accidents at the intersection tonight here with us?
No.
No,
sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't aware that the issue was coming up.
Okay. Councillor Main and then Councillor Doucette.
Yeah, I would support Councillor Doucette on this motion he wants to make, for the simple reason that whole street has the little yellow signs all the way down. So I think it's 40 kilometers right from Clark Street, is it not? All the way down to Clark?
Councillor Hanson? Director Hanson?
Mr. Mayor, at one time that was a 40 zone. Previous council raised the speed from 40 to 50. So it's 50 all the way through from from Welland to the school zone to St. Therese, and then it becomes 60 beyond the school zone. So it's currently a 50 zone at that intersection.
Okay, so having said that, if there would have been a four-way stop there at Elizabeth Street, it would have saved me $54, because I didn't slow down until I got past, till I saw the sign at St. Therese, and it was just way too late. So I got 52 or 53 in a 40. So for people like me, that stop sign would be extremely beneficial.
Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I move that we go ahead and as a council vote, get it done, just like it was done on Elm Street. It's as simple as that.
Councillor Bonner.
excuse me, may I add this? We did the whole study thing, and it didn't happen, and now we've got serious problems. So let's go ahead and do it. The community wants it.
Councilor Butler, please.
I guess I didn't vote for the stop sign that just is coming into effect this week, and I won't vote for this one. I think I'll go back to saying that we have a report that says it doesn't meet the warrants. I'm with Councilor Butters that, we should have a report, even if it's an updated report. Now, we hear tonight there's been 3 more accidents or whatever number of accidents probably since that last report. I guess I'd be interested in seeing that tacked on to the original report that's done and just see where that comes out. Does it get closer to the warrants or whatever? I don't know. I just can't see us popping stop signs in when, you know, the people that are supposed to know tell us it doesn't make it safer. It gives a false sense of security a lot of times to the people that are crossing with the 4-way. To Councillor Main's problem, you know, everything we hear is that if people have a stop sign put in that they say that they feel is not warranted, they tend to speed faster after the stop sign because they think they've been slowed down for no reason. I don't know, will we all of a sudden become the experts on stop signs? I just can't accept that. Sorry, I won't vote for it. Thanks.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm kind of confused myself because a couple of meetings ago, Councillor Desmarais asked for a review of that stop sign on Chippewa Road and said, let's take the stop sign out because the residents are fed up with it because it doesn't meet the warrants. Then we put a stop sign in at Sugarloaf and Elm, even though it doesn't meet the warrants. So we want to take one out because it doesn't meet the warrants, and we want to put one in, but it doesn't meet the warrants, and now we want to put another one in that doesn't meet the warrant. I'm trying to figure out, what are we doing? Consistently inconsistent? Make up your mind. Do you follow the rules that are in place as guidelines from the Ministry of Transportation through the province? They give you guidelines on when to put stop signs in and when not to. I've driven down Sugarloaf many times in the morning at 8 o'clock when you think it's rush hour, and I'm looking in my rear view mirror way back trying to find the car that's behind me. The one car that's behind me with nobody at the stop sign. So while it may get a little bit busy in the summertime, outside of the month or two that there's traffic going in, the other 10 months of the year, there's hardly any traffic along there. When it gets busy at the corner of Elizabeth and Kalali, it's at school time. I don't know why we're not like the rest of the school zones in Niagara that seem to be putting up the flashing lights that say 40 Ks because kids are crossing the street. We don't seem to have those anywhere. But you drive around Niagara, and just about every other municipality is putting them up in school zones, except us. I brought it up, let's change Kalali Street to 50 K all the way through, put up the flashing signs by St. Therese, let people know when the kids are going to school, draws attention to it, makes you slow down because the lights are flashing, and it got shot down. So I'm trying to figure out, like Councillor Bodner said, we know more about traffic control than the traffic control experts. I don't know, I'm confused. Put them in, take them out, don't have a report, don't listen to staff. I'm not going to vote for the stop sign. I mean, I don't even know what the reason for the accidents were. Somebody went through the stop sign and got hit. Somebody didn't see somebody coming. That's not a reason to put a stop sign in because you can't fix stupid. And I don't know if that's why the accidents happened. But take a look at the reasons behind it before we do something and have a reaction. That's me. I'm trying to figure out, you know, you're supposed to listen to the people who know and judge accordingly. And if we're going to make our own rules outside of those guidelines, you better order another 15 or 20 stop signs, Ron.
Council would appear to be strongly divided on this issue. Would this be an appropriate time, or perhaps to consideration, to defer this until perhaps we could update those warrants and get a better handle on the type of collisions and when these collisions have happened? Does anyone wish to go there? Or?
No.
Nope.
The community is expecting a vote.
Okay. Do we have any more comments on the motion on the table? Yes, Councilor Dash?
That's my old neighborhood. I've gone to that intersection many, many times. And people slow down, people drive in all different kinds of scenarios. Unfortunately, the city truck was involved in an accident. As far as I'm concerned, I won't support another stop sign. Enough already. Let's move along. We've got a person that would go and do a study and give us a report. Let's listen to those people. I won't support no more stop signs.
At this time. Any other comments? Yes, Councilor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say that I am absolutely in favor of doing a report. That would be fine. And adding whatever latest data is to that, to looking at that intersection. But I mean, we've been there and done that in the past. Underreported accidents seem to be the clincher here. There are, I've seen accidents myself that are just mere little fender benders. People just, move along from them. They are not going to appear anywhere, but they happen on a regular basis there. Call me a liar if you like, but the fact is they do. So I would definitely like to see this matter settled tonight, but if it's deemed necessary to see another report, by all means.
Well, you've presented perhaps a possibility to have that report done before tonight, or to delay it. If you don't, and no one wishes to do that, then we'll call for the question.
Either way, it'll be up to Councilor Doucette.
Okay. Councilor Doucette, you'll have the last word here.
As I indicated a few minutes ago, the community is expecting a vote this evening. If we delay, I don't want to delay it any further than the next council meeting, which would be the 13th. And since there's already mostly a report, and all it is going to get new data to add to that report, I don't think that would be a hardship to do. But the community is expecting and wants that stop sign. And if it looks like some of the votes are hinged on that, that's fine. I would suggest that council also be very careful here, because, and I'm going to throw this out and you can say what you want about it, one of the things I'm hearing is this, okay? On the west side, you get whatever it is you need, and you get it whatever. On the east side, when we ask, we don't get stop signs. That's the fourth stop sign that I've asked for, and the fourth time I've been refused. And I know for a fact that there are stop signs that have been put in on the west side since. And the people are starting to say that. I'm not saying that. The people are starting to say that. So I would suggest that if we're going to wait, let's wait one more council meeting, but let's make sure we make the decision for the people and make the decision the way the community would like a decision made. And are they professionals? And are they people that will understand all these reports and these accident reports and so on and so forth? No. But let's make sure we serve the people that we're supposed to be serving here. And they are the ones that want it. I'm more than willing to delay it and defer it to one meeting. That's it. No more.
Director Hansen, can those reports be updated by October 13th?
The deadline for that report would be this Thursday. I would have to check the status of vehicular reports, see if we're up to date. They're about a month or two behind. I can honestly say that if there's been 2 or 3 collisions in the last year, if that's the number, and I don't know if that's the number, that will not change the warrants. There is insufficient volume of traffic there. And the last time we did a warrant check on it, there was very, very few accidents. So unless we're up to few accidents at that intersection. So unless we're up to a very large number quickly in the last year or so, and we can certainly check that, it still would not meet the warrants for a four-way stop.
Thank you. If you do not want to deal with this issue tonight, then I need a motion to defer it to the October 13th meeting. Does someone wish to make that motion? Otherwise, I'll call the question. Okay, I call a question on this motion. All those in favor, put your hands straight up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion is defeated.
No, it's tied.
Well, it's not tied. Oh my God, you're right. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. I would have preferred that would have been deferred, but in light that it's not, I will vote against the motion, with the understanding that in the interim, perhaps we can bring those warrants up to date. Councillor or Director Hanson? Thank you. Okay. Any other items, councillors? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sent you an email a week or so ago, and it was regarding some interesting activity on the Friendship Trail going towards from Port Colborne to Fort Erie section. I think when we have like backhoes on the trail, and apparently ATVs and whatnot on that trail, it really does need some extra police presence in that area. Maybe on the weekends. I know it's really tough, but a backhoe on the trail, seriously? I was shaking my head when I got that email from a resident, so I'm hoping that you can use your influence on the Niagara Regional Police to have some extra police presence out on those side roads. And I know it's tough to catch them on that trail. I know it's tough, but without some kind of presence, I think that they're just gonna continue to do that. So if we could get your help with that, I'd appreciate it, and thank you.
A number of policing issues have come up tonight. I will suggest that myself, perhaps the CAO, and anyone else who wants to join with us, have another meeting with Staff Sergeant, and that we met with him perhaps 3 weeks ago. But this is what we've heard tonight is very upsetting, and that the police are going to have to take a stronger stand with their enforcement policies, because the people of this community can no longer put up with the nonsense. And what we heard about the East Village is incredulous. But as you indicated, enforcement is a real problem. We're having the same problem out in the West End on the old cement lands. Something has to be done, and I can appreciate what the folks are going through, the violations with the dirt bikes and the ATVs, and that enforcement has to come along, and if it leads to confiscation of some of these vehicles, all the better. Okay, any other councillors' items? Okay, can we move on to consideration of items requiring separate discussion? Councillor Elliott, you pulled item number 1.
Thank you, Mayor. Give me a second to pull it up. Item 1, Fire and Emergency Services Report number 2015-175, subject Fire Department fee schedule. That's all I have to read, right?
Yes, all you have to read.
Just the header? Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Butters? Discussion? Comments?
Yeah.
Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Chief. Chief, just one quick question. When I saw this, I've heard people that got charged this in other municipalities, and I see that we've got it in here, and it's just a continuation from the last bylaw. On page 35 of our package, in the emergency response, number 3, motor vehicle accident, vehicle fire, and providing firefighting or other emergency services to a non-resident. 1, for the first hour or any part thereof. 2, for each additional 1/2 hour part thereof. $410 per apparatus dispatched and $205 per apparatus dispatched for the additional half-hour part thereof. So that's only for people that are non-residents of the city. If they have an accident and you get dispatched to them, they get charged $410 per vehicle.
Your worship, if I can, to council, that's correct, non-residents. There is an exception to that. If it happens on a Kings Highway, a Highway 3 or Highway 58, we bill MTO. MTO then pays us, and then they claw back the money from the people in the accident.
Okay.
They could be a resident that gets billed. MTO bills them.
MTO bills them.
That's correct, we don't.
Okay. What happens if it's on municipal streets? Then we bill direct?
We can bill direct, we would attempt to bill the insurance company. Again, you got to understand, if I can, your worship, just to explain the situation. If we get into a very severe accident in which a loss of life has occurred or something like that, we in all likelihood wouldn't look to that. I can only think of 2 occasions that involved alcohol that we did in fact invoice for an accident that happened on city streets.
Okay. Is there, when it says per apparatus dispatched, is there like a graduated dispatch system where if a minor accident's 1 vehicle, if a major accident's a couple? I mean, when I saw that, because I'd had it, I know somebody that had happened to, and they were like, you get charged $400 for the fire department coming out, and I'd never heard of such a thing. And then I saw it here, and that's why I'm just asking for clarification. Do we send 2 trucks? When do we send 2? When do you send 1? Is there, like I said, a graduated scale for that?
Again, your worship, to council, normal accident dispatch involves 2, their engine and a rescue truck. If it is a very serious accident, which it might involve a tanker truck or something like that, we would increase the numbers of vehicles. Now, if we were to call a mutual aid because of the severity of the accident, the municipality that we would invoice on our behalf and their behalf, and then we would compensate the company, the department that came in to assist us.
Any other questions? Councillor May?
Yeah, the chief and I talked about number 3 previous to the meeting. I think everybody here has to be aware that even if you are a resident of Port Colborne, if you get an offender bender on the 58 or Highway 3, that charge is applicable to you even though you are a resident. So we talked about, I would like to make a motion to add that to number 3 so that there is no, I didn't know, it's going to be in writing, so it'll be clearly defined. If you'd like to explain that, Chief, please.
Yes, your worship, to yourself and council. Councillor Main and I did have that brief discussion prior to the council meeting tonight. We can certainly add that as an amendment to number 3 in particular, to identify the fact that if the incident occurs on a Kings Highway, that we would then invoice MTO, and they in turn would then invoice the residents.
Does someone want to move an amendment to that recommendation?
Yeah, I'll make that an amendment to that number 3, that we add that in there because it's already there. I mean, the charge is already there, but if it's not in writing, a person like me, if I don't see it in writing, you have to show me, and that's why I figured if we put it in writing, it's there, and it's already a law that's or part of our bylaw that's already being enforced. Other than on this new appendix, it's not really written out.
Just further explanation.
Yeah, further explanation.
Okay, let's deal with the amendment first. Moved by Councillor Main, seconded by Councillor Kent. Yes, Councillor Elliott?
Just for clarification, Chief, that's only applicable to Highway 3 and Highway 58, yes?
Your worship, we're only allowed to bill MTO for accidents on Kings or Queens Highway, Kings Highways, so both of those fall into that category. And in fact, if I could, there's portions that don't. It doesn't come into effect until you get beyond the Canadian Tire gas bar on Highway 58, and within the core of our city, it doesn't, once you get past the signage to where Kalali runs into Maine, it then becomes effective for that, but anything within the core of the city itself is considered city property.
Just have a question, Chief. An accident generally involves a minimum of 2 vehicles. Does that apportion? Who's responsible for that?
Your Worship, my understanding from MTO is they split the bill in half. It goes to the insurance companies, and then the person at fault's insurance company would pay the other insurance company. That's my understanding of it. I really don't know all of that, but my understanding is from over the years is that they don't get into the debate as who's at fault, who should pay, what, because it gets before the courts. So at the end of the day, what they do is they split the bill, whatever it might be, send it to both parties, and then the insurance companies decide who's going to pay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call for the question. Councillor Main.
Chief, the 140 is also a Kings Highway, or is it considered a regional road?
Again, a portion of it, you're correct, thank you for correcting me on that. The 140 is considered Kings Highway. Right from Main Street beyond.
Again, call for the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Call for the question on the recommendation as amended. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Councillor Elliott, you're on for item number 3 again.
Thank you, Mayor. Community and Corporate Services Division Report number 2015-165, subject 2016 budget guidelines.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Doucette. Discussion? No discussion? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Just reading through the report on number 3, staff comments and discussion. Staff will provide council a base level of service budget with an inflationary increase not to exceed 2.1 for base operations. Well, I'm not a big fan of zero-based budgeting because I think we should always increase a little bit to spend some money. The 2.1%, I can understand relative to wages that we can't control that are negotiated contract wage increases. I understand spending gets a little bit. I was concerned with, we're going to set our base level of service with a 2.1 increase for base ops. And then when we get down into the just above 4 options and financial considerations, it says, it is anticipated that an overall increase may reach 3 to 4%, especially with new debenture payments required. And that got me thinking, what would it look like if we held to 1%? We never seem to have staff come back and show us savings, show what it cost. I know nobody wants to cut operating or services. And I take it from what Councillor Desmarais had said today about putting more boots on the ground over on in the East Village, which comes with a price. But we consistently look at 3 to 4%. And looking at our the review of our budget from what we just got from Grant Thornton, the financial statement from 13 or 14, which is amazing that we got it in 15. Kudos to Peter and Grant Thornton. 18, yeah, a little bit better than last year. And our increase in our debentures for 16 are going to be a little bit heavy. So we never asked to see what it would cost to hold the line or increase a little bit. We're going to ask for 2.1%, and then we're going to look at 3 to 4%. I'm not sure, I mean, Peter, you can answer this. Is that including capital, or is that just operating?
Director Sineth?
Through Mr. Mayor, the 2.1% is the cost of inflation at this point. It's on the low end. For operations, the base operations, on top of that, so I mentioned, the overall increase could reach anywhere between 3 and 4% because we normally add about 1% on for our annual increase for our capital levy. And on top of that, we did debenture for a number of projects in 2015, which those debenture payments will come into play in 2016. So that's where I'm saying I don't have the numbers, the figures actually as to what our debenture payments are going to be because we've only received part of it at this point in time. So I'll know a little bit better as we get into budget, and actually we should be getting our additional funds. I'm hoping in October, and know what our payments are going to be going forward to sort of firm up that number. But that would be, the debenture amounts would be on top of that. So that's what we're looking at, 3 to 4%. And the last 2 years, we have averaged around that 3.5% increase on our particular levy. Again, it doesn't mean that is the actual increase for taxes overall for the average ratepayer, because we do blend our tax levy increase along with the regions and the school boards. And in the past, the school boards obviously have always lowered their levy amount, which sort of created, I guess, some room that the municipality can absorb the increases that's required for us to continue to operate as we continue to, majority of our costs are at the lower tier municipality with regard to what we do for the community itself. So with all of those combinations taking into place, the last 2 years we've actually been able to come in with an overall budget increase or tax rate increase, which was pretty much close to a break even or almost a 0%. But it doesn't mean to say that our council can't determine that you want staff to look a little harder, and we do know that there's certain costs that we don't control. So, obviously, as you mentioned, wages, utilities, some of those fixed costs that we do incur, we have no choice but to incur those increased costs. Whether or not there's some other savings within other levels of service that we can look at. It may be 1% in one area, but maybe it's 3% in another area, depending on what the cost levels are. But the average is what we've gone out to departments this year and saying, on average, we're looking at about 2.1%. And then the CAO and myself will sit down with the departments and look at where those increases are and determine whether or not there's items in there that with the departments that may come in under 2% and bring that forward to council. But we definitely be looking to bring forward to council a reasonable increase, knowing that our costs continue to go up. And the fact is that if we don't cover our costs going up, then in actuality we're actually decreasing our level of service because our dollars don't go as far as they would this year or previous years.
Spoken like a true.
I was going
to say, like a true clerk. I mean treasurer. And I get, we've been the beneficiary of the school boards and then of the regional budgets that have come out. They've had some cost savings, which is lowered our overall increase. I mean, people are still paying more because their assessments on their houses are going up. So I'm trying to look at that. I mean, I want to say this nicely. Due to circumstances beyond our control with last winter, we saddled our ratepayers on the wastewater side with an increase due to circumstances beyond our control. So I would just like to try to be as fiscally responsible as we can going forward. We don't have any net growth per se overall. So we're going back to the same people all the time, every year, year over year. It's the same people you go back to. You settle them with the water rate increase, you know, a 2 to 3% increase every year, year over year, over year, over year. Starts to get a little monotonous, and I think that we've all probably heard it from several people that I can't afford my property taxes anymore, on top of my water, wastewater, my hydro bill, my gas bill. Everything's going up. So, you know, we heard Councillor Barrick say you're doing a line item review at the region on everything. I mean, you know, that's getting back to basics, go line by line to review and see if, you know, are you going to keep it or toss it aside? I don't want to do that because that takes way too long. But I guess just to staff, you know, be as prudent as possible. We're really looking to save as much as we can. So I just wanted to bring that up when I saw that the 2.1 and the 3 to 4% increase.
Director Sinette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in addition to that, Councillor Elliott, and that's the one thing that we do, you know, tell our staff, you know, we basically do that exact thing, which is going line by line and service by service to determine, you know, is it legitimate that we need that increase in cost due to increased costs that it's being passed on to us by either contractors or so on. So it is prudent for the departments themselves looking at you know, their line item budgets and determining what level it should actually be at going forward. And you know, in some cases we've lowered some areas, in other cases we've increased areas. It depends on the services that's required and whether or not we have increased costs that we have to incur. So we do try to look at it as a whole and bring forward that to council so that we're bringing forward a realistic budget to council.
Thank you, Mr. Sinette. Any other comments? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Item number 8, Mr. Maine.
Engineering and operations. I'm sorry. Engineering and operations, Engineering Division, report number 2015-164, project number 2015-20, Sugarloaf Harbor Fuel Station decommissioning.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Kenny. Discussion. Mr. Maine?
Yeah. I noticed a big, I don't know, through Mr. Mayor to, I guess, Mr. Hanson, I noticed a large difference in those, the tenders, almost $10,000 difference between the two. And I know we strive for the lowest, but does this also include the rejuvenation of the soil to brownfield standards? And for $10,000 less, is Clay Bar going to be able to do that?
Director Hanson.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, the answer to that would be yes. Under the staff comments, you can see the work involves the removal, decommissioning, abandonment of the existing fuel station that's there now. They have to test the existing old pipes to see if they have to be removed or they can stay in place and be capped. It also includes removal of any asphalt, concrete, granular materials that might have been contaminated by leaking fuels in the past, and the restoration of the site to original conditions. So yes, the contractor will meet all those specifications in doing this contract for $36,000.
It just seemed to me, through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Hanson, just seemed that $10,000 was quite a bit, but and it just had me wondering whether the Clay Bar people would be able to do that. But you have faith in them, and so do I. Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Kenny, I believe you're next with item number 14.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alan Councilman, Regional Chair, Region of Niagara, remote regarding Niagara's region support of the Syrian refugees, requesting City Council support and requesting each Niagara city and town to consider donation of $1,000 to support the cause.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Elliott? Discussion? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brought this forward for council's consideration and just to hear how other councillors felt in regards to this request. I believe when we, I don't believe, I guess I should say, that we should take this money from the taxpayers of the city of Port Colborne. I believe that if in their heart a charitable donation they'd like to make, then they would do that themselves. I have no objection at all to having a jar placed at City Hall with the request for donations and have it there for a period of a month to collect cash donations, and that those cash donations be held to sponsor a family that would come perhaps to our community. That's the only way I would support that. Thank you.
Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with Councillor Kenny. I would not support donating $1,000 to the cause. I do believe that if the people of Port Colborne would like to donate, they should, and certainly the city could help facilitate that by having donation jars around. That would be a good thing. But I don't think we should be making the decision to send $1,000. I truly don't think throwing money at the situation is going to sort it out anyway. But that's it.
Any further discussion? Councillor Doucette?
The only thing I can say is ditto and ditto. We went through this process about, what, 2 or 3 months ago? And it was indicated at that point that we weren't going to help one of our neighbors. And it was much less than that. So if we can't help our own neighbors, then I agree. I think we need to make sure that everyone is aware and we need to give to that, but I don't think that tax dollars are the place to get it from.
Councillor Elliott?
I'll throw this out to everybody in the room. What have the other municipalities done? Has anybody heard from anybody? Anywhere?
It's my understanding this will be addressed at regional council on Thursday.
Okay, but has this gone to all the other municipalities
All 12
yet?
municipalities, yes.
Has anybody met the ask?
I'm not aware.
Be interesting to find out what they're going to do. I'd hate to be the odd man out. I'd hate to see 11 other municipalities step up to the plate and we're the only one that says, well, we're not going to do it. You know, I just don't, I don't know what the discussion has been with everybody else. I mean, obviously it's a world problem. Everybody's being asked to take more, do more. Yeah, I know that we didn't step up to the plate to help another municipality. I mean, some of these people can't help themselves and they're trying to get out of a really bad situation. So, I mean, I would reserve decision until we find out what everybody else is doing. I haven't heard any decisions from any of the municipalities. I know St. Catharines meets tonight. I don't know if it's on their agenda or not, but I mean, we could always sit and wait and see what everybody else does, just to see, like I say. 11 other.
Other comments, Councillor Desmarais? Councillor Maine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really not too concerned with what the other municipalities are doing. That is their individual choice. I am definitely in favor of helping out where we can. I think the individual's choice to give money is their choice. As a city, I'd like to see us do something in the future, possibly even host one of the families that comes to us as a refugee. We don't know what the future is going to bring for this or how we're going to deal with it even nationally, but I would like to see us do something in the future, but certainly not this right now.
Councillor Maine?
I also agree. I really don't think it's council's task or whatever at the municipal level to take taxpayers' money and donate it to a charity on their behalf without much consultation from them. I think the money we get from the taxpayer, the ratepayer, should go in for infrastructure and running the municipal government. World issues should be the federal government. They should be looking at it. And if we need to pay more taxes to the federal government, that's their choice. But at the municipal level, we're small potatoes. You know, we just talked about a 2.1% wish list on the budget. We see people with blue tarps on their roofs because they can't afford shingles. I know I've got two in my neighborhood. We got people who are having trouble paying their water bill. People have trouble paying their taxes. So at the municipal level, let's just stick to the little guy in our own town and do what we have to do. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Maine. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if we put out a donation jar and make sure that we identify, part of what this resolution set out was that it gives information that the Government of Canada has recently created a Syria Emergency Relief Fund, which will match funds up to $100 million donated by individuals to registered Canadian charities between September 12th and December 31st. So I think that if we provide that information to our residents, and I'm happy to throw the first $20 in the bucket for it. I think that's really the way to go and give our residents that opportunity, and then make sure that it goes to one of the registered charities, right? So that the Government of Canada will then it doubles the money and matches those funds, right? So that's what I'd like to see happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Which?
Can we defeat this one first? And then make another motion to put a jar over?
Let's defeat this first if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
Here, pass the cup around.
Yes, go ahead, Director Zunez.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this point, there is no motion on the table because it was for council's direction. So if council's wish is to receive and file this email and then consider another alternative, then make that motion first, and then your second motion of what you want to do.
Okay. Who made the original motion?
B. Kenny lifted it.
B. Kenny, that you wish to they would have to withdraw that recommendation and put forward a new one?
I'll make the thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that we receive and file.
A seconder for that recommendation?
I'm going to give the same.
Carried. Councillor Demery, seconded. Is there a subsequent motion that someone is going to put forward?
Subsequent motion is that we start a jar.
A recommendation?
And we've started it with a glass. Pass it down. Get your money out, boys and girls.
You may wish to consider voting or paying by check. You might get a charitable donation with that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Do we have a motion and recommendation, Councillor?
The recommendation is that we notify either, I guess through our website, we could notify our taxpayers that we are starting a jar or donation jar. And as Councillor Butters said once, for that period of time, September to December, and whatever we collect, we will forward on to the
Mennonite Central Committee Refugee Resettlement Fund.
And go from there.
Are you clear on that? What do you?
We can leave it at the front desk of City Hall. And
Is there a seconder for that recommendation?
Sure.
Councillor Butters?
Yeah, good.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Can I see the hands again, please? All those in favor? Carried. Are there any notices of motion from our councillors? There be none, call for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Are you ready to go into our regular meeting? Or are you prepared to wish a break? No? Okay. I would like to call the order of regular meeting of council 29-15 for today, Monday, September 28th. Are there any addendum items, Mr. Clerk?
There are no addendum items, Mr. Mayor.
Can I motion to confirm the agenda? Moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest tonight? There being none indicated, we'll record that. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of council 26-15 held on September 14, 2015? Moved by Councillor Danch, seconded by Councillor Butters. Any questions or discussions? Call for the adoption of the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Determination of items requiring a separate discussion. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd actually like to see a recorded vote on Councillor Doucette's motion.
Which motion was that now? Right. Oh. Yes, Councillor Elliott?
He made a motion and it was defeated.
Yeah, and now in.
So how do you make another motion after your first motion was defeated?
We're not making another
Comment
motion.
from our clerk? Or our CAO?
When we do this,
Any other
Through your worship to council, in council, in the session of council, we consider items that were referred to council from committee of the whole. Because that item was defeated in committee of the whole, it's my advice and interpretation that it hasn't been referred to council for consideration. So unfortunately, I think it's no recorded vote. It's no vote at all.
Nothing to vote on.
If it was a staff report or something that had been referred, then we would be considering it again in council. So that's the issue.
Councillor Butters?
Why doesn't it count when a counselor brings it up during the committee? Just being a pain in the butt, but why doesn't it, I mean, why wouldn't it count? It came up during the committee meeting, no?
So through your worship to Councillor Butters, I understand what you're saying. The issue is that it hasn't been referred forward to council from the committee. So the committee meeting was conducted and all of the items that were approved in committee are moved forward to council, but the items that weren't approved in committee die at the committee level. So they're not considered any further. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't, because if we vote something in committee and then we're supposed to ratify it, unless that motion can just be brought forward in regular council, right? Because if there's something that's voted down in committee and it still comes to regular council meeting to either be ratified or not, and somebody can lift, even if it was defeated in committee, they can still lift it in council and ask for that recorded vote.
But
So-
was this not a issue that there was a request
From a counselor,
to have it put forward for consideration?
correct.
And that was approved. But the actual motion was defeated.
Right, so why wouldn't you be able to bring it forward into regular council for that recorded vote? Because it was discussed, it was debated at the committee level. The fact that it was defeated is neither here nor there. It's not ratified, done until regular council, or do I misinterpret that?
I understand.
I understand the quandary is.
So, yeah. I know. I guess,
What's it gonna hurt if we
I mean, there's no harm in
Well, I would suspect the result would be similar to the motion that of the committee, but I think the practical approach is that Mr. Hanson suggested that it be possible, perhaps, to have the warrant question on this issue updated, and that Councillor Doucette or Councillor Demeray could again bring that forward at the next cycle, which will be October 13th.
Want me to reply to that?
Pardon me?
You want me to reply to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, certainly.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'd be very happy to take a look at the collision reports and then take the previous report and just update the statistics in that and report that back for the next meeting at council, if that's council's direction.
So, the practical, for me, the practical approach is to, no, it's not, but the question is, do we have a vote or not? Is the issue disposed of or not? Dr. Sinnes?
In looking at, as our CAO has mentioned, normally under councillors' items and business items, it's councillors' items of discussion, and under normal circumstances, most of the motions that take place at the table under councillors' items would be a referring back to staff for a report to bring back the information to council for a vote under the normal process of a report being on the agenda and the voting process at that point. In the fact that the motion came on the table as a councillor item and was defeated at that point in time, it didn't go through. It becomes a non-item, basically, as the CAO had mentioned. It becomes an issue because it doesn't get, because it was defeated, it really doesn't carry forward to your council proceedings. Because if it was a motion that was carried by council, then it would carry forward through the council agenda. But as it's defeated, it does not carry forward through to the agenda. And you know, that's in most cases, you know, what is recommended is that things like that do be referred back to council for an actual report to bring it forward to council for voting, and it's on the agenda, and then that agenda moves forward from committee to council.
Councillor Butters and Councillor Kenny.
See, I don't think that you should lose the ability to have a recorded vote, though. And that, so you're saying if it had been okayed, it would slide through and onto the regular council portion. But because it was defeated, that it doesn't. That doesn't make sense. That's not logical to me, that you would lose your ability to have a recorded vote in the regular council.
Councillor Kenny. Just a
Thank
CAO.
you. Thank you. Okay.
Perhaps I could have the CAO comment on Ms. Butters' comments?
Through your worship to Councillor Butters, I'm not 100% sure, and it's my first time seeing this since I joined the city. Yeah, but I think I'm right. I think that the problem, I think it's where it lies on the agenda. So follow me, if you will, on this. It's not a staff report like item 3 and item 8 are that are being sent forward. It's something that was dispensed with at the committee level. For example, Councillor Demaray's motion referring or directing me to do the terms of reference for the East Village something committee task force isn't going to be considered again in council because it was finished. Yes or no, it was finished at committee. So staff reports and bylaws, proclamations move forward from committee to council, but items, councillor items for discussion do not move forward. They're finished off, I guess, for lack of a better term, at committee. Sorry.
Councillor Demery, you have a comment? And then Councillor Butters. And Councillor Kenny.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I do understand it better. So the better thing to have done, considering we saw, you could see the way the discussion was going, that this was going to be a contentious issue, and that we got indications from Mr. Hanshin that the report is not really going to change anything, or it was unlikely to change anything. So therefore, a recorded vote should have been asked for then at the initial vote. Would that have been correct? So there's no way then for the people of the city to see who voted which way, and that's what's incorrect. That's just, it's unfair to the people of the city, because they want to know, they sent us here to effect a change, they're not getting it, they need to know.
Council has made a mistake in that, and the council will accept the responsibility.
We'll act as a council, yes, and all of us will accept that, but.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to refer it, to get the additional information, but we didn't do that either. So council.
So in the future, we would take the longer route instead of forcing an issue.
Councilor Butters and Councilor Kenny.
Well, I'm just going to ask that maybe our CAO would get a definitive answer, because I've never heard of this either, actually. So I would just like a definitive answer on it, because maybe the procedural bylaw, if it's kind of silent on it, doesn't necessarily mean you should lose that right. And I agree with Angie 100% in terms of not losing your right to have a recorded vote. Like, I think that's important.
Councilor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We took a leave of council first so that his motion could be brought forward. So first of all, we took a leave of council, and everybody agreed to the leave of council. Right. Then Councillor Doucette made the motion. He wanted an answer tonight. And we all voted on it the way we felt, how we felt at the moment. That's how we voted. So I really do feel that should be, because we took a leave of council, we brought it into the agenda. We brought it into the agenda because we had to take a leave to do that. We voted on it. And I believe it's important that we tell our residents how we voted. We should be able to tell our residents how we voted.
Absolutely. On the record.
On the record. And that's why that should be done. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Butner?
Just because you think it should be done, I'm serious though, but if we're not going to follow the procedure, I don't think any of us is afraid to stand up and say how we voted, and anybody watching this program would see how we voted. So if they're really interested, they could watch the council meeting. But if you're just going to want something and have it brought up, we got to follow the rules, or else Peter's going to be wearing that book out every time looking for something because somebody wants Ashley will. So, just my thoughts, but it's very evident how we voted. And Angie, if you want to tell everybody how we voted, tell them how I voted. I don't have any problem with it. So. No problem.
We should draw this discussion to a conclusion. That I'd recognize Councilor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just actually like to hear a formal response to it in the future, maybe some kind of ruling on this, because I don't really understand where this is at and how this comes to be. And obviously, Councillor Butters, who's been here a fairly long time, didn't want to say it in any other way, but she doesn't understand it either. So I really think that we need to understand this to go forward correctly. But as far as how everyone votes, yes, watch the council proceedings on TV. You can see it happen. But people do want us to be accountable for our votes, and I'm just into accountability.
To a senior councillor Butters on this issue.
Ronnie's been around as long as me. Don't let him fool you. So's be Kenny. So's Yvonne. I was just going to say, Angie should be able to reserve the right to bring this back depending on what you find out the ruling on this. Was that fair enough?
Yeah, but that's not a problem.
Would that be fair?
That's
okay.
not a problem.
Then I'm good with it, to wait and see what happens.
CEO, Louis?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Butters and all of council. Once again, I do think I'm right. I don't even, in fact, on the council agenda see, I meant to preface my comments by saying I'm not trying to be obstinate. I do agree in accountability and transparency. I do believe the public has a right to know how each council member, including the tiebreaker, voted on the issue. I don't even have a section of the agenda to put this in, though. We don't even have other business or anything on the council agenda. Perhaps, that would be good. Perhaps one, and I don't think that it's appropriate to change council's decision by going to deferral or something else, because council has decided on the matter. One tool at our disposal might be if one of the members who voted, against the motion wanted to bring it up at next committee of the whole meeting for the benefit of the recorded vote, we could do a reconsideration. It would be a way of getting it back on the floor. If people wanted to change their vote, they could. If people wanted to vote in the same way, they could. And the member could request a recorded vote if recorded votes are allowed in committee of the whole. You know. See, that's the issue. See, and there's also a flaw in our procedural bylaw. It's handcuffing us a little bit, so.
Director Sinez has a comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the other point of where councillors' items will get onto the table and onto the agenda is through a notice of motion. So that's why you have also the notice of motions. So in essence, Councillor Doucette could have put that forward as a notice of motion. He was going to bring this forward. It gets on the agenda. It gets voted on the agenda. It moves forward from the committee to council, and that's the process. So you have two processes. You have the notice of motion to bring it forward so that it's brought forward. Because the notice of motion is you have to give your notice of what you're going to bring forward. It's the next meeting that it does come on the agenda, and the notice of motion is on the agenda, and it becomes a councillor's item on the agenda, and it goes voted on in the committee and goes forward through the council. Other than that, it's a referral to staff for a report to bring back to council. It gets on the agenda. It gets voted on in the proper process of being on the agenda and moving forward from committee to council.
Can't even do this now.
Okay.
Other than requesting a report from council.
So as I understand it, there are no items requiring separate discussion this evening after. Now, I was interested in having that traffic report updated. That would be important if this matter comes back for reconsideration. So in the meantime, do I have council's direction to Mr. Hanson to update that report? Do we need a motion on that, Mr. Clerk? Direction.
Just staff direction.
Would someone care to make that request for staff direction to Councilor Demeray?
I definitely make that request that Mr. Hanson bring back, update the current report so that in case we need it, it is available for reference.
Seconder, Councilor Doucette. Thank you very much. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any notices of motion? Councilor Bodner?
Not a notice motion, but just, can I ask a question on the last? Well, listen.
You want to wait till Ashley's back?
No, this is a practice, no. Peter's working pretty good. Okay, so if somebody that voted in the negative brings it back, is the vote carried that meeting, or is it just asked to be brought back at a future meeting? It's important because one of the people could be away. I could be on vacation. Now you could change the whole thing, and we could do that with anything. We just look around the table and see who isn't here, and, you know. So anyways, I think that's just a, you know.
We have clarification of Mr. Bodner's theoretical or hypothetical inquiry.
I don't even need it right now. Should have it for the next one, next meeting.
All this
Let's put that on who's ready.
Yeah. Go ahead, Director Sinez.
The motion to reconsider, I'll just read out the section of the procedural bylaw for council. The motion to reconsider is a motion to reconsider means a revisit of a previously decided motion for the purpose of rescinding the motion or of changing the motion's core purpose and intent. After any bylaw, resolution, motion, or matter has been decided, except in those situations described below, Any member who voted with the prevailing side may move for reconsideration, so on the affirmative side. Before introducing a motion to reconsider, members shall first give notice of motion to reconsider, and the mayor may ask the member to confirm that they voted with the prevailing side on the matter in question, and such notice of motion shall be referred to the next available council meeting. If the motion to reconsider is carried, the original motion is put back on the floor for a vote. Debate on the original motion shall proceed as though it had never previously been voted on.
So what you're telling me is we need to do a notice of motion
Next
tonight to have it back on next time.
We've passed that. You'd have to bring it forward to the next council meeting.
Well, there isn't any notice of motion yet. Let's shoot. Okay.
Your notice of motions come on the committee side.
Yeah. Got to be done next week.
Next council meeting. Next committee meeting.
Okay, are we content? We can move on. Proclamations. Proclamation for National Child Day, November 20th, 2015. And then there's also additional proclamation of Fire Prevention Week, October 4th to the 10th, 2015. Are you prepared to vote for these proclamations on block? All those in favor? A mover and seconder. It'd be more convenient if I could do that. Moved by Councillor Demeray, seconded by Councillor Butters. Any questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor? Item 7? Okay. We're looking for item 7, return to that, approval of items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Bodnar, seconded by Councillor Butters. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now we have minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. Minutes of the Gateway Business Improvement Area Board of Management meeting on September 8th, 2015. Minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of March 11th, 2015, and May 13th, 2015. And minutes of the Canal Days Advisory Committee meeting of July 15th, 2015. Can we have a mover and a seconder for approval of those minutes on block? Moved by Councillor Main, seconded by Councillor Danch. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Consideration of bylaws. Mr. Sinnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one bylaw with regard to the fire emergency services fees will, because of the amendment to that bylaw will have to be brought forward back to the next committee or next council meeting and be brought forward. So I will be changing the bylaw numbers accordingly. So the bylaws to be approved by council this evening is bylaw number 6283-109-15, being a bylaw to temporarily close a section of West Street and Clarence Street to vehicle traffic October 3rd, 2015 for purposes of the 5th annual Downtown Port Colborne BIA Harvest Fest for 2015. 6284-110-15, being a bylaw to appoint members to the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board. Bylaw 6285-111-15, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Claybar Contracting, Inc. for tender 2015-20 Sugarloaf Harbor Fuel Station decommissioning. 6286-112-15, being a bylaw to authorize entering into industrial tax increment grant agreement with 1907625 Ontario, Inc. and the region of Niagara respecting 1 to 3 Lake Road. Bylaw 6287-113-15, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an industrial tax increment grant agreement with 235-2347 Ontario Limited, respecting 60 Intervals Drive. Bylaw 6288-114-15, being a bylaw to temporarily close a section of King Street to vehicle traffic October 10th, 2015 and October 11th, 2015, and to repeal bylaw number 6278-104-15. And bylaw 6289-115-15, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at special and regular meetings of September 28th, 2015.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on the bylaws? I would propose that we vote on those on block unless there's any further discussions separately. There being none, call for the question. All those in favor of those bylaws as recited by Mr. Sinnes? All those against? It's carried. Call for a motion for adjournment. Councillor Danch? Thank you, Councillor Danch. Seconder? Councillor Desmarais. Thank you.